Yu Min-jae and his two shadows have Na Do-yoon pinned behind the gymnasium dumpsters, and our boy's already bleeding from a split lip. They're not even asking for money this time. Min-jae just wants to hear the crunch when his boot comes down on Do-yoon's phone. That cheap phone is the only thing the orphanage matron ever gave him. And now it's in 3 pieces on the asphalt, screen spiderwebbed into 100 little rainbows. Do-yoon lunges for it and catches a knee to the ribs for his trouble. His lungs empty in a wet gasp, and he folds sideways onto the garbage bags, staring at the shattered screen like it's a dead pet. Min-jae laughs and says the loser looks better down there anyway. His buddies drag Do-yoon up by the collar and slam him against the brick wall so Min-jae can get a clean shot at his stomach. 2 punches later, Do-yoon tastes copper and his legs give out. They leave him crumpled behind the dumpster with a few parting kicks to the shins, already bored of their own cruelty. The final bell rang 20 minutes ago, and nobody comes looking for the orphan kid with the patched blazer and the second-hand sneakers. Do-yoon stays on the ground long after their footsteps fade, clutching the broken phone to his chest. When he finally gets up, he doesn't limp toward the bus stop. He walks the opposite direction, through the rusty fence at the edge of the school property, and into the scrapyard that stretches for acres behind, the old industrial canal. This scrapyard is where Do-yoon has spent every free afternoon for the past 3 years, scavenging motors from dead washing machines and learning how gears work by breaking them apart in his lab. The yard is a graveyard of rusting construction equipment, collapsed cranes, and mountains of twisted rebar that nobody ever bothered to haul away. Tonight, something is different. A pale green glow pulses from beneath a collapsed shelving unit near the north corner, barely visible under the orange sodium lights. Do-yoon wipes the blood from his lip with his sleeve and starts digging. He yanks aside corrugated sheets and rusted pipes until his palms are raw, working toward that weird light like a moth that doesn't care about getting burned. Under a collapsed tower of office chairs, half buried in oily dirt, lies a jagged shard of metal the size of his forearm. It glows from within, not hot, not electric, just green light moving through the metal like blood through veins. The surface is covered in geometric grooves so precise they look laser-etched. But the metal itself is ancient, pitted with corrosion that somehow hasn't dulled its edges. Do-yoon picks it up, and the moment his bare fingers close around it, his vision whites out. He's not in the scrapyard anymore. He's standing inside a memory, a forge the size of a cathedral, walls lined with blueprints made of light, and a mechanical giant being assembled by hands that aren't human. The giant's chest opens, and inside it is a heart made of the same green glowing metal, connected to thousands of filament-thin wires that pulse in rhythm. The vision shoves images into his brain faster than he can process. Gears locking into place, pistons firing in sequence, circuits woven through steel like nervous systems, and a voice that isn't a voice, saying that the metal remembers what it was supposed to be. Then it's over, and Do-yoon is on his knees in the dirt, gasping, the shard still humming in his grip. His hands are shaking, but his mind is suddenly clear in a way it's never been before. He looks at a pile of scrap nearby, a busted servo motor, a car battery with corroded terminals, aluminum struts from a collapsed greenhouse, and he knows exactly what they want to become. He doesn't think about it. He just starts building. Do-yoon works through the night under the flickering yard lights, stripping wires with his teeth, bolting struts together with scavenged screws, and pressing the green shard into a housing he hammers out of a crushed heatsink. The shard slots in perfectly, like it was waiting for him to figure it out. His fingers are bleeding, and his bruised ribs scream every time he bends over the workbench. But he doesn't stop. When the eastern sky starts turning gray, he's staring at a crude drone the size of a shoebox. 4 rotors, a camera salvaged from the dead phone, and the shard pulsing at its core like a heartbeat. He has no remote control and no idea if the thing will even respond to him. He just looks at it and thinks, up. The rotors spin to life with a hum that sounds almost eager, and the drone lifts off his workbench, smooth as a dragonfly. It hovers at eye level, perfectly still, waiting. Do-yoon laughs, a raw, cracked sound that hurts his ribs, and the drone dips left then right, responding to impulses he doesn't remember sending. He has it do a figure 8 around the yard, then fly through a rusted barrel, then hover upside down just because he can. The camera feeds directly into a mental image behind his eyes, a grainy black and white view of the scrapyard from 20 feet up that he can access by just thinking about it. He doesn't know the word resonance yet, and he's never heard of ancient scrap. But in this moment, Do-yoon understands 2 things with absolute certainty. The metal in this yard has been waiting for someone to wake it up, and that someone is him. He stashes the drone under a tarp and walks back to the orphanage with the green shard wrapped in his blazer, every nerve in his body still humming. He doesn't sleep. He sits on his cot and sketches blueprints on the back of his math homework until the matron bangs on his door for breakfast. On the rooftop of the abandoned textile mill across the canal, A man with binoculars and a cheap earpiece lowers his phone and dials a number. He tells the person on the other end that one of the yard rats just pulled a piece of Class 7 salvage out of the north pit and flew it around, like a toy. The voice on the other end is calm, measured, and very, very interested. It asks for details: age, appearance, whether anyone else saw. The spotter gives the description and says the kid looked like he'd been worked over pretty good before he found it. The voice pauses. Then it says to pull back and maintain surveillance, because if this kid can resonate with Class 7 scrap without training, he's not a scavenger. He's a resource. The call ends and the spotter packs up his gear, glancing one last time toward the scrapyard where a shoebox-sized drone is still humming softly under its tarp. Do-yoon shows up at school the next morning with the shard hidden in his locker and a plan forming in the back of his mind. He's been watching Min-jae and his crew operate for 3 years, and he knows 2 things about them. 1. Min-jae cheats on every single exam because he's too stupid to pass on his own. 2. Min-jae always sits by the window in the 3rd floor study hall, where he thinks nobody can see him pull out his phone. That afternoon, while the study hall is packed with students cramming for midterms, the drone hovers silent and invisible against the grimy glass, camera angled perfectly through the window. Do-yoon is 3 floors down in an empty stairwell, eyes half closed, watching the feed in his head. He records every frame. Min-jae scrolling through answers on a burner phone, elbowing his buddy to share the screen, copying equations with a dumb smirk on his face. The footage autosaves to the drone's onboard chip, and 10 minutes later, Do-yoon uploads a perfectly anonymous clip to the school's internal message board. He titles it, "Nothing Fancy," just the exam name and the student ID number visible on Min-jae's desk. By 6th period, the video has 800 views, and the vice principal is escorting Min-jae out of his classroom by the elbow. Min-jae's face cycles through confusion, rage, and something that looks a lot like fear as he passes Do-yoon in the hallway. Do-yoon doesn't smile. He just watches Min-jae go, and the shard in his backpack pulses once against his spine like a satisfied cat purring. The expulsion is official by Friday. Min-jae's parents raise hell and threaten lawsuits, but the video is too clear and too widely shared, and the school board lets the decision stand. For the first time in 3 years, nobody shoves Do-yoon into a locker or kicks his lunch tray or spits on his blazer. The silence feels like breathing after nearly drowning. But silence never lasts in a scrapyard. And 4 days later, Do-yoon walks into the north pit to find 3 men in heavy work boots standing around his tarp-covered workbench. Their truck, a matte black flatbed with a telescopic crane, is parked through a torn section of the fence, its engine still running. The lead man wears a pressed shirt, with the sleeves rolled up and a patch on his chest that reads, "Taesan Construction Group." He smiles like a loan shark at a funeral, and asks Do-yoon if he's the one who's been playing with the special scrap. Do-yoon says he doesn't know what the man is talking about, and his hand is already in his jacket pocket, fingers closing around a motorized glove he finished wiring together 2 nights ago. The glove runs off a capacitor bank strapped to his forearm and delivers enough voltage to floor a grown man for about 20 seconds. The lead man's smile doesn't move. He says the boss is a reasonable guy and he's willing to pay good money for exclusive access to whatever Do-yoon pulled out of the ground. Do-yoon asks what happens if he says no. The man gestures at the crane on the flatbed and says they'll be clearing this entire yard by the end of the month anyway. So the offer is really more of a courtesy. Then he signals the 2 thugs, who start walking toward Do-yoon with their hands open and their boots crunching on gravel. Do-yoon pulls the glove on in one motion, thumb hitting the capacitor switch, and the air around his knuckles crackles with blue static. The first thug grabs for his shoulder, and Do-yoon presses his palm flat against the man's chest. The jolt drops him like a sack of wet cement, limbs twitching, smoke rising from the scorch mark on his shirt. The second thug hesitates, and that's all Do-yoon needs to bolt for the drainage grate behind the collapsed crane. He yanks the grate open and drops into the sewer tunnel below, landing in ankle-deep water that smells like rust and regret. The lead man's voice echoes down after him, saying this isn't over, and that the boss doesn't like being told no by orphans playing inventor. Do-yoon runs through the dark for 10 minutes before he stops to catch his breath, chest heaving, the capacitor on his arm drained down to a faint hum. His drone is still back in the yard under its tarp, and the green shard is hidden in his locker at school, and everything he's built so far is either lost or about to be. But he's not dead, and he's not in handcuffs. And something about the way the lead man's voice tightened when he said, "special scrap," tells Do-yoon he's sitting on bigger leverage than he understands. He follows the sewer tunnel deeper, one hand on the slimy wall, until his foot hits something solid in the dark. Not a pipe, a hinge. He flicks on his phone's flashlight, the replacement he scavenged from a junk drawer, and finds a rusted maintenance hatch set into the tunnel wall, half hidden by decades of grime and mineral crust. The hatch hasn't been opened in a very long time, but the hinges are still oiled and turn without a sound. Behind it is a ladder leading down into a space that glows the exact same shade of green as the shard in his locker. Do-yoon climbs down. He finds a workshop that looks like it was built before the city existed. Stone walls covered in blueprints drawn on yellow drafting paper, workbenches littered with half-assembled machines he can't name, and shelves stacked with core pieces in varying sizes, all of them pulsing faintly in the dark. In the center of the room, an old man in grease-stained coveralls looks up from a dismantled turbine and says he was wondering when someone would finally fall through that particular hatch. The old man introduces himself as Sim Jae-woo, and he says he's been waiting 20 years for someone who could hear the scrap sing. He asks Do-yoon if he's ready to learn what the metal is actually for, or if he wants to keep shocking goons in alleyways until a better armed crew finally puts him in the ground. Do-yoon looks around at the blueprints, and the cores and the machines that shouldn't exist, and he asks when they can start. The rooftop gangbanger watches Do-yoon dig through the trash like a rat looking for a discarded meal deal. He doesn't know what the loser is searching for, and he doesn't care. His job is simple. Keep an eye on the scrapyard, report anything weird, and collect his envelope at the end of the week. But then, Do-yoon pulls something out from under a collapsed shelving unit. Something that glows. The spotter nearly drops his binoculars. He fumbles for his phone and dials a number he's been told never to call unless it's urgent, his thumb slipping on the cracked screen, and the man on the other end picks up on the second ring. The spotter stammers that there's a kid at the north yard who just dug up a piece of metal that's shining green, and the line goes dead silent for 3 full seconds. Then the voice on the other end tells him to stay put and keep watching, and the spotter hears an engine turn over in the background before the call cuts out. He spends the next 2 hours crouched behind a rusted ventilation unit, watching Do-yoon carry the shard back to a tarp-covered workbench and start pulling parts from piles of junk. The kid works fast for someone with bruised ribs and a split lip. He scavenges a motor from a busted desk fan, rotors from a shattered drone some idiot crashed into a billboard, and a phone camera he pried out of his own dead device with a screwdriver and pure spite. The spotter can't see exactly what he's building, but whatever it is takes shape under Do-yoon's hands like the scrap wants to be assembled. It's unnatural. It's exactly the kind of thing Kwon Tae-san pays people like him to notice. By the time the sun dips below the warehouse rooftops and the yard floods with orange light, Do-yoon has a crude shoebox-sized drone hovering 3 feet off the ground, its 4 rotors humming, and the green shard pulsing at its core like a second heartbeat. The spotter photographs it with his phone, hands shaking, and sends the image to the same number. The reply comes back in under a minute. Keep watching. Don't engage. Report everything. So the spotter watches Do-yoon control the drone with nothing but his thoughts, sending it zipping through rusted car frames and around the twisted arm of a collapsed crane. And the spotter knows he's looking at something that's going to make him either a very rich man or a very dead one. He decides to push his luck and keeps watching. The next morning, Do-yoon walks into school with his drone dismantled in his backpack and a plan that's been simmering in his skull since he woke up. He knows Yoo Min-jae is scheduled for a math exam in classroom 3B on the 3rd floor, and he knows the windows face the old maintenance shed that hasn't been locked properly since a janitor lost the key in 2019. Getting onto the shed roof is easy. Assembling the drone with cold fingers and a racing pulse is harder, because if anyone glances out a window and sees him, he's finished. He fits the rotors into their brackets and slots the camera module into its housing. And when he clips the green shard into the core cradle, the whole machine hums to life like it's been waiting for this exact moment. The drone lifts off his palm with no sound but a whisper of displaced air. He sends it up to the 3rd floor window and peers through the camera feed on his replacement phone. The cracked one he scavenged from a junk drawer and taped back together with electrical tape and stubbornness. The camera feed is grainy but good enough. He can see Min-jae slouched in the back row, his sleeves rolled up and his phone tucked under his exam paper, and the idiot isn't even trying to hide it. Min-jae scrolls through answers on a cheating app with the screen brightness cranked all the way up. Because Yoo Min-jae has never faced a consequence in his life and doesn't believe consequences exist. Do-yoon starts recording. The footage is perfect. 10 minutes of crisp video showing Min-jae's phone screen, Min-jae's face, Min-jae's exam paper, and the teacher at the front of the room grading papers without looking up once. When the drone drops back into Do-yoon's palm and he kills the feed, his hands are steady. He doesn't feel nervous. He feels like a bolt being tightened. 40 minutes later, sitting in the empty computer lab during lunch break with a burner email account and a stolen Wi-Fi password, Do-yoon uploads the video to the school's anonymous message board with a simple subject line: 3B math exam, watch the back row. Then he closes the laptop walks to the cafeteria, and eats his rice like it's any other Tuesday. The video spreads faster than a cold in winter. By third period, half the school has seen it. And by final bell, the administration has Min-jae in the principal's office, with his parents on speakerphone, and the evidence projected onto the whiteboard behind the principal's desk like a courtroom exhibit. Min-jae screams and threatens and tries to grab the principal's laptop, but two security guards block the door, and a third one escorts him to the parking lot, while his mother shouts about lawyers and defamation. And none of it matters because the video is already backed up on 3 different devices, and the school board votes to expel him before the end of the week. Do-yoon watches Min-jae clean out his locker from the second-floor balcony, leaning against the railing with his hands in his pockets and his face blank. He doesn't smile. He doesn't wave. He just watches, and when Min-jae looks up and their eyes meet for 1 cold second, Do-yoon doesn't flinch or look away or duck his head the way he's done for 3 years. Min-jae is the one who looks away first. For the next 4 days, nobody shoves Do-yoon into a locker or kicks his lunch tray or spits on his blazer, and the silence feels like breathing after nearly drowning. He uses the quiet to work. He builds a motorized glove in the scrapyard at night, wiring a capacitor bank he scavenged from a broken defibrillator to a contact plate in the palm. And the first time he tests it on a stack of cardboard boxes, the jolt punches a scorch mark clean through 3 layers and leaves the air smelling like a lightning strike. He stashes the green shard in his school locker behind a false panel he cut from a dented metal ruler because the scrapyard doesn't feel safe anymore, and neither does his dorm room. He's right not to feel safe. 4 days after Min-jae's expulsion, a matte black flatbed truck with a telescopic crane on its back crashes through the scrapyard fence and parks, next to Do-yoon's tarp-covered workbench, and 3 men in heavy work boots climb out. He smiles like a loan shark at a funeral. He asks Do-yoon if he's the one who's been playing with the special scrap. Do-yoon's hand is already in his jacket pocket, fingers closing around the motorized glove, and the capacitor hums against his forearm like a warning. He asks what the man is talking about. The lead man's smile doesn't move. The spotter on the rooftop. The photos. The call. He asks what happens if he says no. The lead man gestures at the crane and says they'll be clearing this entire yard by the end of the month anyway. So the offer is really more of a courtesy. And then he signals the 2 thugs and they start walking toward Do-yoon with their hands open and their boots crunching on gravel. The second thug hesitates. His mouth opens and closes like a fish on a dock. And that's all the head start Do-yoon needs. He bolts for the drainage grate behind the collapsed crane, yanks the rusted cover open with strength he didn't know he had, and drops into the sewer tunnel below. The water is ankle deep and cold and smells like rust and regret, but he runs through it for 10 minutes straight, one hand on the slimy wall, chest heaving. The capacitor on his arm drained down to a faint hum that barely registers. The lead man's voice echoes down after him from the grate, telling him this isn't over, telling him the boss doesn't like being told no by orphans playing inventor, telling him they'll find him, and they'll take everything he's built. Do-yoon keeps running. When he finally stops, bent over with his hands on his knees and his breath coming in ragged gasps. He's deeper in the sewer system than he's ever been, and his phone flashlight is the only thing keeping the dark from swallowing him whole. His drone is still back in the yard under its tarp. The green shard is hidden in his locker. Everything he's built so far is either lost or about to be. He follows the tunnel deeper until his foot hits something solid. Not a pipe, a hinge. He flicks his phone light downward and finds a rusted maintenance hatch set into the tunnel wall, half hidden by decades of grime and mineral crust. And when he crouches to examine it, his breath catches in his throat. The hinges are oiled. Someone has been maintaining this hatch for a very long time. He pulls it open and finds a ladder leading down into a space that glows the exact same shade of green as the shard in his locker. He climbs down. The workshop is huge. Stone walls covered in blueprints drawn on yellowed drafting paper. Workbenches littered with half-assembled machines that look like they were designed by someone who learned engineering on another planet. And shelves stacked with core pieces in varying sizes. All of them pulsing faintly in the dark, like a room full of embers waiting for a breath of oxygen. In the center of the room, an old man in grease-stained coveralls looks up from a dismantled turbine and smiles. He says he was wondering when someone would finally fall through that particular hatch. He asks Do-yoon if he's ready to learn what the metal is actually for. And Do-yoon, standing in a workshop full of machines that shouldn't exist, with Taeson's thugs still hunting him above ground and the green glow of a dozen cores reflecting in his eyes, asks when they can start. The 3 men step out of the flatbed truck like they own the place. And technically, they do.
태산 컨스트럭션 그룹은 쓰레기장 3주 전 도윤은 몰랐다. 리드맨의 미소는 눈을 뚫지 못했다.
His shirt is pressed, sleeves rolled to the elbow, patch on his chest, Taesan Construction Group. He asks if Do-yoon is the one who's been digging through the scrap like a rat. Do-yoon's hand slides into his jacket pocket. The capacitor bank hums against his forearm. He asks the man what he wants. The lead man says the boss is a businessman, not a monster. He's offering good money for exclusive access to whatever Do-yoon pulled out of the ground. That's when Do-yoon catches movement on the rooftop across the street. The spotter, still watching, still reporting. Do-yoon asks what happens if he says no. The lead man gestures at the crane behind him. He says they're clearing this entire yard by the end of the month anyway. The offer is really more of a courtesy. And then he nods. The two thugs start walking. Boots on gravel, hands open, no weapons visible. They don't think they need weapons. Big mistake. Do-yoon pulls the glove on in one motion. His thumb finds the capacitor switch. The air around his knuckles crackles blue. First thug reaches for his shoulder. Do-yoon presses his palm flat against the man's chest. The jolt drops him like a sack of wet cement. Smoke rises from the scorch mark on his shirt. His eyes roll back. He's done. The second thug freezes. His mouth opens and closes like a fish on a dock. Guess what Do-yoon does next? He bolts. Straight for the drainage grate behind the collapsed crane. The second thug lunges, but he's too slow. Do-yoon yanks the rusted cover open with both hands. The hinges scream. He drops into the darkness below. Icy water swallows his ankles. The sewer tunnel smells like rust and regret. But he runs. One hand on the slimy wall, chest heaving, feet splashing through ankle-deep filth. The capacitor on his arm drains down to a faint hum that barely registers. He's got nothing left. The lead man's voice chases him down through the grate. It echoes off wet stone and rusted pipes. He tells Do-yoon it isn't over. He says the boss doesn't like being told no. Not by a 16-year-old orphan playing inventor. He says they'll find him. They'll take everything he's built. Do-yoon keeps running, 10 minutes straight. Then 15. His lungs burn. His legs are rubber. But he doesn't stop until the voices fade, and the only sound is the drip of condensation and his own ragged breathing. He's deeper than he's ever been. His phone flashlight cuts a pale cone through the dark. The green shard is hidden in his locker at school. But he's not dead. He's not in handcuffs. And something about the way the lead man's voice tightened when he said, "special scrap," sticks in his brain like a splinter. They don't just want the scrapyard. They want what's under it. They want what he found. Which means what he found is worth more than a construction company's demolition budget. He keeps moving. The tunnel narrows, then branches, then narrows again. He picks his path by instinct. Downhill. Always downhill. And after 20 minutes, his boot hits something solid. Not a pipe. A hinge. He stops. Crouches. Flicks the phone light downward. A maintenance hatch, rusted and ancient, set into the tunnel wall, half hidden by decades of grime and mineral crust. And the hinges. The hinges are oiled. Clean metal gleams through the rust. Someone's been maintaining this hatch for a very long time. Do-yoon's fingers find the edge. He pulls. The hatch swings open without a sound. Behind it, a ladder drops into a space that glows the exact same shade of green as the shard in his locker. He climbs down. The ladder is solid. 40 rungs, maybe 50. The green glow gets brighter with every step. When his boots hit stone, he turns around and his jaw drops. The workshop is huge. Stone walls covered in blueprints, real blueprints, drawn on yellowed drafting paper, covered in notations in a language Do-yoon doesn't recognize, but that his gut somehow understands as mechanical logic. Workbenches everywhere, half-assembled machines that look like someone learned engineering on another planet. Gears within gears. Circuits grown like tree roots. Pistons that don't connect to anything visible, and yet somehow pulse in rhythm with each other. And the shelves. Shelves stacked with core pieces in varying sizes. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. All of them pulsing faintly in the dark, like a room full of embers waiting for a breath of oxygen. In the center of it all, an old man in grease-stained coveralls looks up from a dismantled turbine. His hands are scarred. His glasses are taped at the bridge. He smiles. Do-yoon's hand comes up, still wearing the glove, capacitor dead, but the old man doesn't flinch. He just wipes his hands on a rag and stands. His name is Sim Jae-woo. He says he's been waiting 20 years for someone who could hear the scrap sing. Do-yoon stands there. The green glow of a dozen cores reflects in his eyes. Taeson's thugs are still hunting him above ground. His drone is abandoned. His glove is dead. But he's standing in a room full of machines that shouldn't exist, with a man who apparently knew he was coming 2 decades before he was born. He asks when they can start. Sim Jae-woo's smile widens. He says right now. Sim Jae-woo doesn't waste time with speeches. He walks Do-yoon over to the nearest workbench and sweeps a pile of gears aside with one scarred forearm. Underneath is a slab of scrap metal the size of a dinner plate, dark and lifeless. No green glow, no hum, just dead weight. Sim tells him to make it sing. Do-yoon stares at the thing like it's a practical joke. His hand hovers over the metal and nothing happens. Sim leans against the bench and crosses his arms. He says resonance isn't magic. It's not wishing. It's listening. Do-yoon closes his eyes and tries to feel something. The workshop is silent except for the faint pulse of the cores on the shelves. His bruised ribs ache. His split lip throbs. The dead capacitor glove hangs limp on his forearm. But the metal doesn't respond. Sim asks him what the shard in his locker felt like the first time. Do-yoon remembers the vision. The forge. The mechanical giant. The heat in his bones. He says it felt like something was already inside the metal, waiting for him. Sim nods. He says that's because something was. The scrap isn't raw material. It's memory. Every piece of it once belonged to something larger. Something that thought. Something that moved. Something that was alive in a way human engineering can't replicate. Do-yoon looks down at the dark slab on the bench. He stops trying to push his mind into the metal. Instead, he just listens. His breathing slows. The workshop fades. And then he hears it. Not a sound exactly, more like a pressure behind his eyes. A rhythm that doesn't match his own heartbeat. The slab on the bench flickers once. A pale green light rolls through it like slow lightning under dark glass. Sim smiles but doesn't say a word. Do-yoon keeps listening. The rhythm sharpens. He can feel the shape of the original machine the scrap came from. It was a joint, a pivot point in something enormous that walked on 6 legs and carried a furnace in its chest. He doesn't know how he knows that. He just does. The metal warms under his palm. Sim tells him to ask it to move. Do-yoon pictures the shape he wants. A simple hinge. One fold. That's it. The slab shudders on the bench and then bends exactly in half like a piece of paper creased by an invisible hand. The green glow holds for 3 seconds and then fades. Do-yoon's knees nearly buckle. His head pounds like someone drove a nail through his temple. Sim catches his shoulder and guides him onto a stool. He says that's normal. The first resonance always burns more than it should. The brain isn't built to talk to metal. It has to learn. Do-yoon asks how long it takes. Sim says most of his students took weeks. Do-yoon looks up. He asks how many students Sim has trained. Sim's expression doesn't change. He says, Do-yoon is the third. The first 2 burned out their nervous systems trying to hold resonance too long. One is in a coma in a care facility outside Seoul. The other walks with a cane and can't hold a spoon without shaking. Do-yoon stares at the folded slab on the bench. Sim asks if he wants to stop. Do-yoon's answer is already on his face. He pulls the stool closer to the bench and asks what's next. The next 3 days are brutal. Sim runs Do-yoon through resonance drills until his nose bleeds and his vision doubles. He learns to shape the scrap into simple forms. A lever, a gear, a piston that cycles once before the connection snaps. Each time the green glow lasts a little longer, his headaches become a constant, low-grade throb behind his eyes. Sim feeds him instant noodles and bitter tea that tastes like engine degreaser. He says the tea helps with the neural inflammation. Do-yoon drinks it anyway. By day 4, Do-yoon can hold resonance for 12 seconds straight. Sim tells him that's enough to build something useful. He pulls a set of blueprints from a drawer and spreads them across the bench. The design is simple. A lightweight frame from scavenged bicycle tubing. 2 wheels reinforced with scrap plating. A compact core as the power source. No combustion engine, no battery, just resonance and momentum. Sim calls it a runner. Do-yoon calls it freedom. The build takes another 2 days. Do-yoon's hands are raw from cutting and welding. Sim teaches him to braze joints with a tiny oxyacetylene torch that's older than both of them combined. The core piece they use is the size of a marble. It slots into a housing. Do-yoon machines from a block of aluminium he finds under a bench. When he resonates with it, the core hums at a frequency he can feel in his teeth. The rear wheel spins once, twice, then holds a steady rotation without any physical connection to the motor housing. It's not turning the wheel with a chain or a belt, it's telling the wheel to turn. Do-yoon straddles the finished scooter and grips the handlebars. The frame is ugly, welded seams everywhere. The wheels don't match. One's from a mountain bike and the other's from a kid's tricycle. Sim found in a drainage culvert. But when Do-yoon twists the throttle grip, the scooter surges forward and doesn't stop. He nearly puts it through a workbench. Sim laughs for the first time since Do-yoon fell through the hatch. It's a dry rattling sound like ball bearings in a coffee can. He says the runner will get Do-yoon anywhere in the city without a drop of fuel and without leaving a heat signature. No engine, no exhaust, just the resonance between the core and the wheels. Do-yoon asks how fast it can go. Sim says he doesn't know. Nobody's built one of these in 40 years. The next morning, Do-yoon takes the scooter up through a different exit. Sim shows him a tunnel that slopes upward to a storm drain behind an abandoned textile mill. The mill's been closed since before Do-yoon was born. Nobody watches the back fence. He pushes the scooter through the rusted gate and straddles it on the cracked asphalt of the access road. The city skyline rises gray and indifferent to the east. His school is somewhere out there. His locker with the green shard inside it. His drone under a tarp in a scrapyard he can't go back to yet. He twists the throttle, and the scooter launches him forward with a whispered hum. No roar. No smoke. Just speed. He takes the back streets toward the scrapyard district. Not close enough to be seen. Just close enough to check. And that's when he sees it. A massive digital billboard on the side of a construction supply warehouse. It's usually advertising cement mixers and steel rebar at wholesale prices. Today it's showing a press conference. Kwon-tae-san stands at a podium in a suit that costs more than the orphanage Do-yoon grew up in. His smile is polished marble. Behind him is a rendering of a development project. Glass towers, green spaces, shopping promenades, all of it sitting directly on top of the scrapyard. The chyron reads, Tae-san Construction Group announces major urban renewal project. Demolition begins in 2 weeks. Do-yoon's grip on the throttle tightens. He watches Kwon talk about revitalization and progress and cleaning up dangerous abandoned lots that attract criminal elements. He never mentions the scrap. He doesn't have to. Do-yoon knows exactly what this is. They couldn't buy him, so now they're going to bulldoze the whole site and sift through the rubble at their leisure. He turns the scooter around and heads back toward the textile mill. His knuckles are white on the handlebars, but his face is calm. He's done reacting. He's going to start planning. Sim is waiting for him in the workshop when he gets back. The old man takes one look at Do-yoon's face and asks what happened. Do-yoon tells him about the billboard, the press conference, the 2-week deadline. Sim sets down the bearing assembly he's been cleaning and doesn't speak for a long moment. Then he says it's time Do-yoon understood what's really under the scrapyard. He walks to the back wall of the workshop and pulls a tarp off something Do-yoon assumed was another broken machine. Behind the tarp is a reinforced steel door set into the stone. Heavy bolts. Pressure seals. A keypad that looks like it was salvaged from a Cold War bunker. Sim punches in a code that's far too long to be memorized by accident. The bolts retract with a hiss of compressed air. Behind the door is a shaft. Not a sewer tunnel. Not a maintenance passage. A vertical shaft bored through solid bedrock with walls that glow faintly green. Do-yoon steps closer and feels the resonance before he even touches anything. It's massive. Whatever's down there isn't a shard. It isn't a core piece. It's the source. Sim's voice is quiet. He says the ancients called it the heart. It's the reason the scrap exists. The reason Do-yoon can hear metal sing. Every piece of ancient scrap in the world was once part of the machine this heart powered. Kwon-tae-san doesn't just want the scrapyard, he wants the heart. And if he gets it, he won't just control a construction empire. He'll control the means to build weapons that make nuclear arsenals look like firecrackers. Sim says they have 2 weeks to figure out how to stop him. Do-yoon stares down into the glowing shaft. The resonance hums in his bones. It feels like standing at the edge of something that's been waiting for him his whole life. He asks Sim how deep the shaft goes. Sim says about 200 meters. Then a chamber. Then the heart. Do-yoon asks if they can move it, destroy it, hide it. Sim shakes his head. The heart is bigger than a house and hotter than a blast furnace at its core. It can't be moved. It can't be destroyed by anything human technology can produce. But it can be sealed. Sim says the ancients built a containment mechanism around it. It's still functional, mostly. He was the one maintaining it for the past 20 years. That's why he stayed down here, while the world above forgot he existed. Do-yoon turns away from the shaft. His face is set. He asks Sim what they need to do. Sim pulls 3 ancient blueprints from the shelf and spreads them across the workbench. One shows the containment mechanism. One shows a security grid that's been dormant for millennia. One shows something Do-yoon doesn't recognize. A weapon platform. Powered directly by the heart. Sim's finger taps the 3rd blueprint. He says if Kwon's people breach the chamber, they won't just find the heart, they'll find this. And if they learn how to activate it, there won't be a city left to fight over. Do-yoon looks at the blueprints, then at the shaft, then at the shelves of core pieces glowing like embers in the dark. He says they need to get down there first. Sim punches the last digit, and the bolts retract with a hiss that sounds like a dying animal. The door swings inward, and a draft of cold air rises from the shaft. Air that hasn't seen sunlight in millennia. Do-yoon peers over the edge. The walls are smooth stone, threaded with veins of green light. The glow pulses slow and steady, like a heartbeat frozen in geological time. Sim grabs 2 harnesses from a locker bolt into the wall and tosses one to Do-yoon. He says the descent takes about 15 minutes if they don't stop to sightsee. Do-yoon clips in and hooks his carabiner to the steel cable running down the shaft's center. Sim goes first. The old man moves like someone who's done this 100 times, because he has. Do-yoon follows, lowering himself hand over hand. The green veins in the rock grow brighter the deeper they go. At 50 meters, the resonance hits him like a wave, not the gentle hum he's used to from the workshop. This is a deep, subsonic thrum that vibrates in his molars and makes his fillings ache. His nose starts bleeding before he even realizes it. Sim glances up and tells him to breathe through it. The body adjusts. Mostly. At 100 meters, the shaft widens and the walls change. Gone are the natural stone surfaces. Now they're carved with reliefs, massive humanoid figures with elongated limbs and featureless faces. They're building something. A machine, or a city, or both. Do-yoon wants to stop and study them, but Sim keeps descending. The old man says the carvings go all the way down, and they don't have time for archaeology. At 150 meters, the shaft opens into a horizontal corridor. Sim unclips from the cable and lands on a stone platform slick with condensation. Do-yoon drops down beside him, and his boots echo in the dark. The corridor ahead is maybe 3 meters wide and 4 tall. Walls of the same carved stone, green veins pulsing in time with the resonance that's now loud enough to feel in his sternum. Sim says the traps start here. He pulls a fist-sized core piece from his coveralls and tosses it down the corridor. It clatters on the stone and rolls. Nothing happens for 3 seconds. Then the floor drops. Not the whole floor, just a single segment, 3 meters long, that swings downward like a trapdoor. Below it is a pit. Do-yoon can't see the bottom, but he hears what's down there. Metal grinding on metal. Old gears still turning after thousands of years. Sim says the ancients had a sense of humor. Pressure plates in the floor linked to counterweights and blade arrays. Step on the wrong stone and you get turned into confetti. He points to the walls. See those channels? They're guides for spring-loaded spikes. Trip the beam and you get skewered from both sides simultaneously. Do-yoon asks how they get through. Sim smiles and says he's been maintaining this route for 20 years. He knows which stones are safe because he set half of them himself. They move forward. Sim first, stepping on specific paving stones that look identical to all the others. But Do-yoon notices the pattern. Every third stone on the left, then diagonal right, then skip 2 and center. It's a rhythm. Once he locks into it, he can almost hear the sequence in the resonance. Like the metal in the floor remembers being walked on. Halfway through the corridor, the trap design changes. The floor segments are gone, replaced by a long open channel cut into the stone. Inside the channel is a massive iron gear, maybe 2 meters across, its teeth still sharp. It's not moving. Not yet. Sim stops at the edge and points to a thin wire stretched ankle-high across the gap. Tripwire. Break the beam and that gear spins up. He says it'll walk the entire length of the channel like a saw blade chasing a log. Do-yoon asks how they disable it. Sim says they don't. They jump. The old man takes a running start and clears the channel with a grunt, landing in a crouch on the far side. Do-yoon follows. His boots hit the stone and the resonance surges for a half second. The gear twitches, but the beam stays intact, and the gear settles back into silence. Sim nods like that was a test, and Do-yoon just passed it. They push deeper. The corridor bends left. The green light is brighter now, almost bright enough to read by. Do-yoon can feel the heart ahead of him. Not just hear it. Feel it in his chest, like a second pulse layered over his own. The resonance is so strong his vision blurs at the edges. He blinks hard and focuses. The corridor dead ends at a massive stone door, twice as tall as the one in the workshop. No bolts, no keypad, just a single handprint carved into the stone at chest height. The print is sized for something with fingers longer than a human's. Sim says this is as far as keys and codes will take them. The door only opens for someone who can resonate. Someone the heart accepts. Do-yoon steps forward. He presses his palm into the handprint. The stone is cold. Then it isn't. Green light floods the carved channels in the door. It traces the outline of a shape he can't quite understand. Something circular, something with layers. The resonance climbs to a pitch that makes his teeth ache and his vision tunnel. His nose drips blood onto the stone. And then the door opens. The chamber beyond is vast. Bigger than a cathedral. Bigger than the entire school. The ceiling arches 50 meters overhead, and the walls curve away into shadow. And in the center of it all is the heart. Sim wasn't exaggerating. The thing is bigger than a house. A sphere of what looks like solid green light, hovering inside a cage of ancient metal struts. The struts are the containment mechanism Sim talked about. Massive interlocking rings of black iron, each one thick as a subway tunnel, rotating slowly around the sphere in opposing directions. They're covered in the same carvings Do-yoon saw on the way down. Figures building, figures praying, figures dying. The hum in here is physical. It presses against Do-yoon's skin and makes the hair on his arms stand up. He can feel every piece of scrap in the chamber. Not just the heart, the struts, the rings, the ancient tools scattered on stone workbenches ringing the perimeter. All of it sings. Sim's voice is quiet, almost reverent. He says, this is what's left of a civilization that mastered metal before humans mastered fire. They built the heart to power their machines, their cities, their wars, and then something went wrong. He points to a section of the containment rings where the metal is scorched and warped. Not ancient damage, recent, 20 years ago, give or take. Sim says Kwan's people aren't the first to try to take the heart. There was an expedition, funded by the military, back before the city expanded this far. They breached the chamber and tried to extract a core sample. The heart defended itself. Sim doesn't explain what that means, but Do-yoon sees the scorch marks, and the silence is enough. He asks what happened to the expedition. Sim says one man survived. He spent the next 2 decades down here making sure nobody else made the same mistake. Do-yoon looks at the old man, at the grease-stained coveralls and the taped glasses and the scarred hands. 20 years in the dark, guarding something nobody believed existed. He asks if Sim ever tried to leave. Sim says the heart doesn't let its keepers go. Not really. Not ever. Before Do-yoon can ask what that means, the resonance shifts. Not louder, deeper, like the heart just noticed him. The green light pulses once, and Do-yoon's knees nearly buckle. His vision goes white. He sees the forge again, the mechanical giant. But now it's not a vision. It's a memory. Not his. The heart's. He sees the ancients building this chamber, sees them feeding the heart with something that looks like molten starlight, sees them fighting something dark, something that made them build the weapon platform Sim found blueprints for. And then he sees the heart go dormant, sealed away by the survivors, buried under a mountain that would one day become a scrapyard in a city that didn't exist yet. The vision snaps off like a cut wire. Do-yoon gasps, and his knees hit the stone. Sim is beside him, a hand on his shoulder. He asks what Do-yoon saw. Do-yoon tells him about the dark thing, the enemy the ancients built the weapon for. Sim's face goes pale. He says he's been studying the carvings for 2 decades and never figured that part out. He thought the weapon was just another machine. But if it was built to fight something specific, something the ancients were afraid of, then sealing the heart wasn't just about protecting it from humans. It was about protecting humans from what the heart could wake up. Do-yoon gets to his feet. His nose is still bleeding, but his head is clear, clearer than it's ever been. The resonance isn't pain anymore. It's a frequency he's finally tuned to. He can feel every strut in the containment mechanism, every gear in the dormant security grid, every bolt in the weapon platform hidden somewhere in the shadows behind the heart. He asks Sim where the weapon is. Sim points to a secondary chamber carved into the far wall, sealed with a smaller version of the stone door. He says he's never been able to open it. The heart's memory surges in Do-yoon's skull, and he knows the answer before he even thinks it. The weapon isn't meant to be opened by a keeper. It's meant to be opened by a pilot. He doesn't know what that means yet, but he knows it's true. And then the lights cut out. Not the heart. The heart still pulses steady and green. But the ambient light from the shaft entrance goes dark. Sim's head snaps toward the corridor. His hand goes to a core piece on his belt. He says they've got company. Figures pour out of the corridor. 6 of them. Tactical gear. Night vision goggles pushed up on their helmets because the chamber doesn't need them. Assault rifles with underbarrel attachments that glow with familiar green light. Core-powered weapons. And behind them comes a 7th figure, taller, broader, wearing an exosuit that hums with the same frequency as the heart. The suit is rough, clearly a prototype, all exposed hydraulics and welded plating. But it's functional, and it's powered by a core piece the size of a softball mounted in the chest plate. The man inside scans the chamber, and his eyes find Do-yoon, Ju-hyuk. His voice echoes across the stone. He tells Do-yoon that Kwon Tae-san sends his regards. Then he tells his men to take the boy alive. They open fire. The air shrieks as green-tipped rounds tear through the space where Do-yoon's head was a second ago. Sim is already moving. His hand slams a pressure plate on the nearest stone pillar, and the chamber answers. A wall of interlocking metal plates screams up from the floor between them and the soldiers. Ancient and pissed off and glowing faintly green. The rounds spark off it like hail on a tin roof and don't leave a scratch. Ju-hyuk's voice booms from behind the barrier. ordering his men to flank around. Sim grabs Do-yoon by the collar and drags him toward the secondary chamber. The old man's grip is iron, and his face is stone. He says the barrier won't hold long. Not against core-powered weapons. Do-yoon can feel it through the resonance. The plates are already microfracturing under sustained fire. Sim shoves a fist-sized chunk of the heart into Do-yoon's hands. The thing pulses warm and alive against his palms, and his resonance screams up to full volume. Sim tells him to run, not to argue, not to look back. Do-yoon opens his mouth, and Sim cuts him off. He says the heart doesn't let its keepers go, and then he smiles, and it's the saddest thing Do-yoon has ever seen. And then, Sim Jae-woo turns around and walks toward the generator housing beneath the containment rings. Do-yoon bolts. Behind him, the barrier shudders as Joo-hyuk's exosuit slams into it, hydraulic fists pounding dents into ancient metal. Sim reaches the generator, a cylindrical thing the size of a water heater, studded with core fragments and wrapped in copper coils thick as his arm. He sets both hands on the control panel and starts feeding every last scrap of resonance he has into the overload sequence. The heart's pulse spikes. Green light floods the chamber, so bright the soldier's night vision goggles crack and short out. Joo-hyuk bellows at his men to grab the old man before he finishes. Too late. Sim closes the final circuit, and the generator sings one pure, perfect note. And then it detonates. The explosion doesn't burn, it pushes. A concussive wave of raw kinetic force rips through the chamber, slamming soldiers into walls, tearing Joo-hyuk's exosuit off its feet. The containment rings groan. The ceiling starts coming down. Do-yoon is already through the secondary chamber's stone door when the first boulder hits the floor behind him. The door seals itself the second he crosses the threshold. He spins around and pounds on it, screaming Sim's name. No answer. Just the rumble of collapsing stone and the dying echo of the generator's final note. His knees give out. The core fragment in his hands pulses once, twice, and then his resonance snaps into a shape he's never felt before. It's not listening now. It's a command. The weapon platform answers. It rises from the shadows at the back of the chamber, a skeletal frame of green-lit alloy standing 3 meters tall, all sharp angles and dormant power. It has no cockpit, no controls, just a hollow space in the center of its chest, exactly the size of the fragment in Do-yoon's hands. He doesn't think. He walks forward and presses the fragment into the slot. The machine wakes up. Green light floods every joint and seam, and the platform folds itself around him. Armor plates locking into place like they were built for his body. A heads-up display flickers to life in his vision. Not screens, not glass, just data appearing directly in his mind. The platform speaks. Not words, intent. It shows him the collapsed chamber behind the sealed door, shows him the structural weak points in the ceiling above, shows him a secondary escape shaft bored into the rock 200 meters to the east. It asks him what he wants to do. He wants to dig Sim out. The platform shows him the math. The tonnage of collapsed stone, the time before oxygen runs out, the 0% chance of reaching the old man before he suffocates. Do-yoon screams at it to try anyway. The platform doesn't argue, it just shows him the truth he already knows. Sim Jae-woo is gone, buried in the dark, guarding the heart. 20 years and he never left. Do-yoon stands in the silent machine and lets the grief hit him like a freight train. And then he tells the platform to get him out. It moves. The escape shaft is narrow and vertical, and the platform climbs it with taloned hands and feet, faster than any human ever could. 2 minutes later, it punches through a maintenance grate, and Do-yoon is standing in the rain. Behind him, a sinkhole is swallowing the scrapyard. The ground rumbles and groans, and then goes quiet. The hidden workshop, the shaft, the heart, all of it, sealed under 100,000 tons of collapsed bedrock. And Sim Jae-woo with it. Do-yoon sheds the weapon platform in an alley 3 blocks away. The thing folds itself back into a compact cube the size of a backpack, inert but still warm. He carries it under one arm and walks through the rain until he finds a bus shelter. He sits there for a long time. Nobody comes looking for him. Kwon's men probably assume he's dead, crushed in the collapse just like the old man. Let them. He has 2 weeks until the demolition crews arrive, and Kwon claims the rubble for himself. 2 weeks to figure out what he's supposed to do without the only person who understood what he was becoming. The cube hums softly against his side. He still has the fragment. He still has the platform. He still has the blueprints burned into his memory from weeks of resonance training. Not enough, not nearly enough, but it's what he's got. He gets up and starts walking. 2 days later, a beat-up cargo van rolls out of an abandoned garage on the industrial waterfront. It doesn't look like much from the outside. Rust on the wheel wells, primer gray paint, a dent in the rear bumper the size of a fist. Under the hood is a different story. No engine block, no transmission, no fuel lines. Just a reinforced cradle holding the cube in its folded form. Wired into a drivetrain Na Do-yoon machined from scavenged parts and resonance-forged alloy. The van hums instead of rumbles. No exhaust, no heat signature above ambient, no license plate a camera can read because he covered it in a film that scatters infrared. He parks it behind a shipping container warehouse and spends the first night running diagnostics through the platform's neural link. Everything checks out. The van is his mobile base now, big enough to hold equipment, small enough to disappear into the city's forgotten corners. He names it the Scrap Runner. Not clever, not flashy, just true. Day 3, he sets up surveillance. Small drones this time. Palm-sized quadcopters he builds from old smartphone parts and resonance-shaped rotors, each one drawing power wirelessly from the cube inside the van. They fan out across the city and start mapping Confrontation's movements. Construction convoys, warehouse deliveries, a private security detail that moves in packs of 6 and carries weapons that glow green under infrared. Kwon isn't hiding anymore. He's gearing up. Do-yoon watches the feeds on a salvaged monitor and starts building a target list. Warehouse 7 on the East Docks gets a lot of deliveries marked Construction Aggregate that weigh 3 times what they should. Warehouse 12 in the old rail yard has armed guards at every entrance and no windows. Taesan Construction Group's headquarters is a glass tower in the financial district with a basement that doesn't appear on any public blueprint. He can't hit any of it yet. Not alone. Not without intel he can trust and a way past Kwon's security grid. He needs allies. Specifically, he needs someone who can crack Kwon's encrypted communications and slip through his firewalls without leaving a trace. The platform's tactical analysis flags a name from 6 months of leaked corporate data. Choi Ga, freelance hacker, 23 years old, wanted by 3 loan sharks, 2 ex-employers, and a very angry cybercrime division she embarrassed on a live stream. She's good, maybe better than good, and she's currently hiding in a condemned apartment building, 6 kilometers from Do-yoon's van. He goes to find her. The building is a concrete carcass in a neighborhood the city forgot. Broken windows, water damage, a smell of mold and old cigarettes. Do-yoon climbs 6 flights of stairs with the cube slung over his shoulder and finds her door. It's the only one on the floor with a working electronic lock and a proximity mine wired into the frame. He stops 3 meters short and holds up both hands. The door speaker crackles. A tired voice asks if he's with Kwon's people, the cops, or the loan sharks. He says none of the above. She asks him to prove it. He tells her he's the kid who just collapsed a scrapyard on top of Kwon's best mercenary team. Long silence. Then the lock clicks, and the mine powers down. Choi Ga opens the door with a taser in one hand and an energy drink in the other. She's got circles under her eyes deep enough to store spare change, and a rig of salvaged electronics covering every surface of the apartment behind her. She looks him up and down. She says he looks like he hasn't slept in a week. He tells her he hasn't. She says that's a good start, and she steps aside to let him in. Our boy has a hacker now, and together, they're about to turn Kwon-tae-san's empire inside out. Jia's apartment smells like fried circuits and instant ramen. She gestures at the mess with her energy drink and says, "Make yourself at home." Our boy scans the room and spots at least 4 different rigs running at once. Wall of monitors shows a dozen feeds, traffic cams, corporate servers, a live stream of some guy getting arrested. She's been busy. He sets the cube down on a clear patch of floor, and it hums against the concrete. Ga stares at it. She asks what the hell that thing is and why it's vibrating. Do-yoon tells her it's a power source, and he needs her to help him take down a billionaire. She cracks a grin for the first time, says she's been waiting her whole life for someone to walk through that door and say those exact words. He pulls up the platform's tactical data on a salvaged tablet and shows her what he's got. Kwon-tae-san. Taesan Construction Group. Warehouses full of glowing scrap. Security teams running weapons that shouldn't exist. An excavation schedule that ends with him owning everything under the scrapyard in 13 days. Ga sucks air through her teeth. She tells him this isn't just a rich guy with goons. This is a guy who's been paying off city officials, police chiefs, and building inspectors for at least 5 years. She's been tracking his encrypted communications for months just for fun. Never could crack them. The encryption is military grade with some kind of weird energy signature baked into the signal. Do-yoon nods. That's the scrap. Kwon's using resonance-charged hardware to lock down his network. But here's the thing. Our boy can resonate with that same scrap. Jia's eyes go wide. She asks if he's telling her he can talk to the metal. He says not talk, listen. And if they can build a bridge between her rig and his cube, She might be able to piggyback on that resonance to slip past the encryption. GA chugs the rest of her energy drink and crushes the can. She says that's the dumbest, most insane, most beautiful plan she's ever heard. Let's do it. They get to work immediately. GA clears a table and starts stripping wires from a gutted server rack. Do-yoon opens the cube just enough to expose a single resonance node, a hair-thin filament of green glowing alloy. He holds resonance for 8 seconds and guides the filament into a modified receiver GA soldered together from 3 Wi-Fi cards and a car stereo. The first test fries the receiver instantly. Smoke fills the room, and GA coughs, but she's already grabbing a replacement. She says, okay, so the signal's a little hot. Guess what she does next? She doubles the insulation and adds a buffer circuit scavenged from an old amplifier. Second test holds. Her monitor lights up with a data stream that wasn't there before. Layers of encrypted traffic pouring through Kwon's private network. GA starts laughing. She says she can see everything. Every delivery schedule, every guard rotation, every back-channel payment to every corrupt official on Kwon's payroll. She scrolls through the data and her face goes flat. She tells Do-yoon they got a problem. A big one. Kwon's not just stockpiling scrap for construction. He's building weapons, not guns, not missiles. Something called Project Overlord, buried in a sub-basement under his headquarters. The file's heavily redacted, but the power draw estimates are terrifying. Whatever that thing is, it's designed to channel resonance on a citywide scale. Do-yoon stares at the screen. He remembers what Sim told him. The heart wasn't a power source, it was a seal. Something dark underneath it. And now Kwon's building a weapon that runs on the same frequency. Our boy clenches his jaw. He tells GA they need more intel, and they need it fast. She says she's on it, but she needs better hardware. The stuff she's got can intercept data, but it can't process fast enough to decrypt the Overlord files. For that, she needs a quantum processing unit from a corporate server farm. And the nearest one is in Kwon's own headquarters. Of course it is. They spend the next day building the swarm. Do-yoon fabricates 16 palm-sized quadcopters from resonance-forged alloy and salvaged drone parts. Each one weighs less than a phone. Each one draws power wirelessly from the cube at a range of up to 2 kilometers. Each one carries a microcamera, a signal relay, and a tiny resonance pulse emitter GA designed. She calls them bumblebees. He doesn't argue. They launch the swarm at dusk. The drones fan out across the city and start mapping Kwon's entire operation. Warehouse 7 on the East Docks lights up on the feed. 18 armed guards, 2 armored trucks, and a loading bay full of crates marked with that green glow. Warehouse 12 is worse. 24 guards, motion sensors along the perimeter, and a resonance dampener field that makes Do-yoon's teeth ache just looking at the readings. But the headquarters? The headquarters is a fortress. Glass tower in the financial district, 60 floors of legitimate business. Below street level, the bumblebees pick up 12 sublevels that don't appear on any public record. Armed checkpoints at every elevator bank. Resonance-shielded vaults. And at the very bottom, a chamber that registers so hot on the resonance scale, the drone's sensors overload and reboot. GA whistles low, says, that's where they're keeping the Overlord. That's the target. Day 4 after the collapse. Do-yoon's monitoring the drone feeds when GA suddenly slaps his arm and points at one of her monitors. A live news broadcast. Kwon-tae-san is holding a press conference. He's standing at a podium in front of the construction supply warehouse, a digital billboard behind him showing a rendering of gleaming glass towers and green promenades. Kwon looks calm, polished, expensive suit, perfect hair, the smile of a man who's never been told no. He addresses the cameras and says a terrible crime has been committed against his company. He describes an act of industrial sabotage. A young man, a student, broke into a secure facility, assaulted his employees, and triggered an explosion that destroyed valuable equipment. The screen behind him switches to a grainy security photo. It's Do-yoon, his school ID photo, taken from the Academy's database. Kwon announces a reward of 50 million won for information leading to the boy's arrest. He calls Do-yoon a dangerous fugitive and urges the public to report any sightings immediately. Our boy watches his own face broadcast to the entire city. GA swears under her breath and starts killing every digital trace of their location she can find. Too late. The broadcast triggers a citywide manhunt. Within hours, police cruisers start patrolling neighborhoods they haven't touched in years. Facial recognition cameras at every intersection. Checkpoints on the bridges. Do-yoon's face is everywhere. A team of officers raids their building 6 hours after the broadcast. GA spots them on a drone feed. 8 cops and 2 plainclothes guys with resonance detectors sweeping the front entrance. She yells for Do-yoon to grab the cube. He's already moving. The weapon platform folds against his back, and he scoops the cube under one arm. GA triggers her emergency wipe protocol. Every hard drive in the apartment starts smoking. They're out the fire escape before the cops breach the door. The scrap runner is parked 3 blocks away in an alley behind a fish market. They run. Plainclothes guys pick up the cube's resonance signature and give chase. Do-yoon hears them shouting into radios. Target mobile, heading east, request air support. GA's lungs are burning, but she doesn't slow down. She asks if he's got a plan. He says he's working on it. They round a corner and he spots a drainage grate set into the curb. Not the sewers again. But there's no choice. He rips the grate off with a resonance-assisted yank and drops into the dark. GA follows without hesitation. They run through the tunnel network for almost an hour. The resonance signature bounces off the concrete walls and confuses the trackers. Eventually, the radio chatter fades. They emerge through a maintenance hatch into an abandoned subway station. It's a relic from the 80s. Concrete platforms, rusted tracks, a collapsed ceiling at the far end that lets in thin shafts of daylight. Graffiti covers every surface. Smells like damp and rust and old engine oil. GA collapses against a pillar and catches her breath. She says this is actually perfect. She's already scanning the electrical conduits with her salvaged tablet and muttering about rerouting power from the grid lines above. There's a maintenance room behind the platform with a steel door that still locks. Do-yoon forces it open and finds a workbench, old tool lockers, and an emergency generator that probably hasn't run since before he was born. He sets the cube down in the center of the room. The hum fills the space, and the green light reflects off the concrete walls. GA looks around and grins. She says this is better than her last apartment. At least the neighbors won't complain about the noise. Our boy doesn't smile. He's staring at the bumblebee feed on the tablet. The police are pulling back from the search grid, but not because they lost him, because Kwon's private security teams are moving in. 6 armored vans rolling toward the industrial district. Resonance detectors on every vehicle. Ju-hyuk is leading the convoy. GA leans over his shoulder and watches the feed. She asks if that's the guy. Do-yoon nods. That's the guy who killed Sim. GA cracks her knuckles and fires up her rig. She says, good. Now they know exactly who to hit first. The two of them convert the maintenance room into a proper operations center. GA patches into the city power grid through a junction box in the tunnel. She runs cables to a salvaged bank of monitors and sets up a localized network that piggybacks on abandoned fiber lines. Do-yoon builds. He constructs a resonance amplifier from scrap iron and a thumb-sized core fragment. Nothing close to the cube's output, but enough to boost their drone range to 5 kilometers. He builds a signal scrambler that can jam Kwon's resonance detectors within a 100-meter radius. He builds charging cradles for 24 more bumblebees using old phone batteries and resonance-forged connectors. By the end of the first week underground, they have eyes on every major target in Kwon's network. Warehouse 7's delivery schedule. Warehouse 12's guard rotations. The headquarters shift changes and security protocols. All of it streaming in real time. GA looks at the mosaic of feeds and says they're ready. She's cracked the first 3 layers of Overlord encryption. It's bad. Kwon's weapon isn't just designed to channel resonance. It's designed to broadcast it. A citywide EMP that fries every electronic device in range. Except, it won't just kill phones and computers. It'll kill anything with a nervous system. Resonance at that frequency and power level will stop hearts. Millions of people. Do-yoon watches the data scroll across the screen. His jaw tightens into a line of cold fury. He asks how long they have. Jia checks the construction schedule. The Overlord's power core needs a massive resonance source to activate. Something buried under the scrapyard. Something that's going to be exposed when the demolition crews finish their work. 13 days. 13 days until Kwon gets what he wants. 13 days until he kills a city. Our boy stands up and starts pulling components from the shelves. He tells GA to keep cracking the encryption. He's going to build something that can stop a convoy. She asks, what kind of something? He doesn't answer. He's already deep in resonance, the green glow burning behind his eyes. GA finds the target first. Warehouse 7's delivery schedule updates in real time on her salvaged monitors. A cargo truck loaded with processed scrap leaves the East Docks every Tuesday at 2 a.m. 2 escort vehicles, 4 guards per truck. Standard patrol rotation every 15 minutes. Our boy studies the route overlay for exactly 6 minutes. Then he starts building. He pulls a resonance amplifier from the shelf and cracks it open. The thumb-sized core fragment inside still glows steady green. He rewires the amplifier to project a focused pulse instead of a broad boost. Think of it as a sniper rifle instead of a floodlight. GA watches him work and asks if he's planning to shoot the truck with that thing. He doesn't look up. He tells her he's planning to shoot the engine block. The next 3 days are a blur of fabrication and testing.
Do-yoon builds a stabilizer harness for the amplifier,
So it can fire from a drone at 200 meters. He builds a signal relay that bounces the Bumblebee feed through 3 abandoned cell towers. No direct line of sight required. He builds 2 magnetic grapple clamps powered by resonance-shaped alloy. They latch onto a truck's undercarriage and hold 1,000 pounds each. GA handles the digital side. She maps every traffic camera, every police patrol route, every blind corner along the Warehouse 7 corridor. She codes a loop script that feeds the security cameras static for 90 seconds. Long enough to hit the truck, not long enough to trigger an alert. The night comes, 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Industrial district, no streetlights for half a mile. The Bumblebee hovers at 200 meters with the amplifier rig bolted to its belly. Do-yoon sits cross-legged in the subway maintenance room with the tablet on his knees. His eyes are closed. He's not looking at the feed. He's feeling it. Resonance hums through the cube, through the relay, through the drone, through the amplifier. Every piece of metal in a 3-kilometer radius sings in his skull. He can feel the truck's engine block vibrating 20 blocks away. GA counts down the distance. 500 meters, 300, 100. He fires. The amplifier pulses once. A tight green beam lances down from the drone and hits the truck's hood. The engine doesn't explode. It just stops. No spark, no combustion, no power. Every electrical system in the vehicle goes dead at 60 kilometers per hour. The driver wrestles the wheel as the truck coasts to a grinding halt in the middle of the empty road. The 2 escort vehicles screech to a stop behind it. Guards pile out, rifles up, scanning rooftops. They don't look up. GA triggers the loop script, and every traffic camera in a 4-block radius goes dark. 90 seconds. Do-yoon opens his eyes. He's already running. He emerges from a drainage grate, half a block from the stalled convoy. The weapon platform folds against his spine, cold and ready. He doesn't need it yet. He stays low and moves through the shadows between warehouses. The guards are shouting into radios, trying to figure out why the engine died. One of them pops the hood and stares at a block of metal that's completely cold. No smoke, no fire, no bullet holes. Just dead. Our boy reaches the truck's undercarriage from the blind side. The magnetic grapples clamp onto the frame with a soft click. He attaches the second set 3 meters back. Then he pulls a small resonance igniter from his belt and presses it against the cargo door's lock. One pulse. The lock snaps open. Inside the truck are 12 pallets of processed scrap, raw bars of resonance-forged alloy, each one the size of his forearm. They glow faintly green in the dark. He estimates 300 bars total, enough to build a small army. He loads 2 bars into his pack. GA's voice crackles through his earpiece. 30 seconds. Do-yoon attaches a tow cable from the magnetic grapples to a winch he bolted to a sewer grate earlier. He hits the switch. The cable goes taut. The entire truck lurches sideways. The guards spin around, rifles raised. They see a cargo truck sliding toward a drainage ditch like something invisible is dragging it. One of them starts shooting. The rounds spark off the resonance-forged alloy bars inside the truck. 0 damage. The truck tips into the ditch with a grinding shriek of metal and vanishes from sight. The guards reach the edge in time to see the rear bumper disappear into a storm drain. GA says time's up. The traffic cameras flicker back on. The guards are standing around a ditch with no truck, no cargo, and no explanation. One of them radios it in. His voice is shaking. Do-yoon is already 3 blocks underground. He drags the pallets through the sewer network on a makeshift sled built from a scavenged shopping cart and resonance-forged runner. The trip takes 2 hours. GA meets him at the tunnel junction with a hand truck. She looks at the 300 bars of processed scrap and grins. She says this is enough to crack the whole Overlord encryption. Our boy just nods. He's already thinking about the next target. The next morning, Joo-hyuk receives the incident report. He reads it twice. Then he crushes the tablet in one hand. He asks his lieutenant how someone steals an entire cargo truck in 90 seconds with no ignition source and no explosives. The lieutenant doesn't have an answer. Joo-hyuk stands up and walks to the hangar. The exosuit waits in the center of the floor. It's 3 meters tall, matte black, with reinforced hydraulic limbs and a plasma cutter mounted on the right arm. The chest cavity holds a core fragment twice the size of Do-yoon's. It hums with restrained violence. Joo-hyuk climbs into the cockpit, and the suit seals around him with a hiss of pressurized air. He tells the lieutenant to pull every resonance detector they have and grid search the industrial district. No more convoys. No more cargo trucks. He's going hunting. 48 hours later, the Bumblebees pick up 6 armored vans rolling in a search pattern. Resonance detectors on every vehicle. Joo-hyuk's exosuit is riding in an open-topped transport truck behind the formation. The suit's thermal scanners sweep the streets in slow arcs. GA watches the feeds and mutters that this is bad. The search grid is tight. It'll cross the subway station's ventilation shaft within 3 hours. Do-yoon stands up and pulls the weapon platform onto his back. He tells her to pack everything critical. She asks if they're running. He says no, they're baiting. He grabs 4 resonance-forged bars from the stolen stash and heads topside through a maintenance hatch. He emerges in an abandoned textile factory half a kilometer from the subway station. The roof is collapsed. The floor is covered in rusted looms and moldy fabric rolls. Perfect echo chamber for a resonance spike. He arranges the 4 bars in a square on the factory floor. He connects them with resonance-forged wire. Then he touches the center of the array and pulses. Green light erupts from the bars and blasts upward through the collapsed roof. Every resonance detector in a 5-kilometer radius screams. Joo-hyuk's thermal scanners lock onto the spike instantly. The convoy changes direction. 6 armored vans and 1 exosuit converge on the textile factory. Do-yoon is already gone. He's sprinting through the sewer tunnels toward a secondary exit 3 blocks east. The weapon platform amplifies his speed. Each stride covers 4 meters. GA feeds him the convoy's position through the earpiece. She says they're taking the bait. All 6 vans are circling the factory. She asks what the play is. He tells her to watch. The 4 bars in the factory reach critical resonance. Do-yoon rigged them to overload. The green light brightens to white. The air around the factory shimmers. Joo-hyuk's exosuit stomps through the front wall. He sees the 4 glowing bars arranged on the floor. He realizes what's about to happen. Too late. The bars detonate. Not an explosion, a resonance pulse. A hammer of pure green energy that expands outward at the speed of sound. It hits the 6 armored vans first. Every electronic system fries instantly. Engines die, radios scream static, headlights pop. The vans roll to dead stops. The guards inside are blinded by the flash. The pulse hits the exosuit. Joo-hyuk's systems flicker. The plasma cutter sputters. The core fragment in the suit's chest dims. But it doesn't die. The exosuit's shielding absorbs the worst of it. Joo-hyuk roars and charges out of the factory. He's tracking the residual resonance signature. Straight toward the subway station. GA sees him coming on the feeds. She says the suit is still operational. Do-yoon curses. He thought the pulse would knock it out completely. He tells her to grab the cube and the data drives and meet him at Junction 7. She's already moving. Joo-hyuk reaches the subway entrance in 4 minutes. He doesn't bother with the stairs. The exosuit punches through the concrete platform and drops directly into the station. The impact crater is 3 meters wide. He lands in the maintenance room. The monitors are still warm. The workbench is covered in half-finished components. The scrap stash is gone, but the resonance residue is fresh. He follows it. GA runs through the tunnels with the cube in her backpack and a tablet tucked under her arm. The exosuit's footsteps shake the walls behind her. She's not going to make it. Do-yoon comes around the corner at a dead sprint. He grabs her by the arm and pulls her into a side passage. He presses his palm against the wall and resonates. The ancient metal in the tunnel ceiling remembers how to move. A section collapses between them and the exosuit. Joo-hyuk punches through it in 8 seconds. But 8 seconds is enough. Do-yoon and GA reach Junction 7 and climb the emergency ladder. They emerge in a storm drain behind the fish market. The scrap runner is parked exactly where they left it. They pile in, and Do-yoon slams the accelerator. The van hums and surges forward. Behind them, the storm drain grate explodes outward as the exosuit claws its way to the surface. Joo-hyuk stands in the middle of the street. His thermal scanners lock onto the van's resonance signature. He starts running. The exosuit's stride covers 10 meters at a time. The scrap runner hits 80 kilometers per hour on the empty pre-dawn streets. The exosuit keeps pace. GA watches the rear camera feed and says he's gaining. Do-yoon tells her to hold on. He swerves into an alley too narrow for the suit. The exosuit smashes through the buildings on either side without slowing down. Bricks and glass rain onto the street. Joo-hyuk is maybe 40 meters behind them now. Do-yoon pulls a small resonance igniter from his pocket. The last one he built. He throws it out the window. It clatters against the pavement. The exosuit steps on it. The igniter detonates directly under the suit's left foot. A focused resonance spike punches through the ankle joint. Hydraulic fluid sprays. The suit stumbles. It doesn't fall, but it slows. The scrap runner disappears around a corner. Joo-hyuk stands in the middle of the ruined street. His suit is damaged, but operational. His core fragment is still burning. He watches the van's heat signature fade. Then he reaches the subway station on foot. He walks through the ruined maintenance room and finds what Do-yoon left behind. The resonance amplifier. The signal scrambler. The charging cradles. None of it matters. But under the workbench, he finds a single scrap of paper. A delivery manifest from Warehouse 7. Joo-hyuk reads it. Then he smiles. The manifest lists every piece of equipment Do-yoon used in the last 2 weeks, including the brand of thermal shielding on the scrap runner's external panels. Joo-hyuk radios his lieutenant. He tells him to recalibrate the thermal scanners to filter out that specific shield. The van's been hiding by blending into ambient heat signatures. Now they know exactly what to look for. Somewhere in the city, Do-yoon parks the scrap runner in an underground garage. GA is shaking. She asks if they lost him. Do-yoon looks at the damage feed from the bumblebees, still circling the industrial district. He watches Joo-hyuk climb out of the exosuit with the manifest in his hand. He says no. They didn't lose him. They just showed him how to find them. The mercs move at 4 a.m. Joo-hyuk gave them the new thermal filter specs an hour ago. Now 12 armed men in tactical gear descend into the subway tunnels. Their boots splash through puddles of stagnant water. Night vision goggles paint the walls green. GA's on watch duty. She sees them on the bumblebee feeds the instant they breach the north entrance. She slams the alert button. A low pulse thrums through the base speakers. Do-yoon wakes on the cot in the maintenance room and is on his feet in 3 seconds. He pulls up the camera grid on the wall monitor. 12 heat signatures. 2 teams of 6. Pincer formation through the old platforms. They know the layout now. The thermal shielding on the scrap runner's panels gave them the signature they needed. And Joo-hyuk's people mapped the tunnels from the heat bleed. Do-yoon tells GA to grab the cube and the data drives and head for Junction 12. She's already pulling the cube from its cradle in the van's chassis. Her tablet is under her arm. She moves fast, but she's not panicking. She's been running from people her whole life. Loan sharks, landlords, now mercenaries. The backpack is on her shoulders in 10 seconds. Do-yoon pulls a reinforced panel off the workbench. Underneath sits the capacitor glove, freshly charged. He straps it on. Next to it, the last resonance igniter he built. 2 palm-sized discs that look like bottle caps. He pockets them both. Then he reaches for the half-finished thing under the tarp in the corner. He's been working on it for 4 days. It's not done. It's not even close. The left arm is missing 3 servos. The right leg joint is held together with zip ties and prayers. But the core socket works. He steps into the exoskeleton frame. It's skeletal. Bare metal struts and exposed wiring. No armor plating, no weapon systems, just a reinforced spine, partial leg actuators, and 1 functional arm with a pneumatic grip. He slots a marble-sized core fragment into the chest socket. The frame hums to life. Green light runs through the conduits like blood through veins. GA looks at him and asks if that thing is safe. He says no. She nods and runs for Junction 12. The first merc team hits the maintenance room door with a breaching charge. The door blows inward. Smoke fills the room. 2 men enter with rifles raised. The workbench is empty. The monitors are dark. The scrap runner's bay is clear. But the exoskeleton is standing in the middle of the room with its 1 functional arm raised. The mercs hesitate. That's the wrong decision. Do-yoon swings the arm in a wide arc. The pneumatic grip catches the first merc in the chest and sends him through the drywall. The second merc opens fire. Rounds spark off the exoskeleton's frame. Do-yoon feels the impacts through the struts like punches to his ribs. He charges. The frame's leg actuators whine and pop. He slams into the merc shoulder first and carries him through the door frame. Both of them crash into the tunnel wall. The second team is coming up from the south platform. GA's path to Junction 12 takes her right through their approach vector. She sees them on her tablet 30 seconds before they'd see her. She ducks into a maintenance alcove and pulls up the base's internal security. She can trigger the tunnel lights in sequence. A distraction. She runs a script. The lights along the south platform flicker in a wave pattern, south to north. The merc team turns and tracks the lights. They think someone's moving that way. They follow the flicker. GA slips past them in the dark. Her sneakers make no sound on the wet concrete. She's 10 meters from Junction 12 when the third merc team appears. She didn't see them on the feeds. They came in through a service hatch she didn't know existed. 5 men. They surround her before she can run. The merc in charge, a woman with a shaved head and a shock baton, tells her to drop the bag. GA doesn't drop it. She pulls the tablet from under her arm and hits the execute key on a program she's been saving for 3 days. Every speaker in the subway system blasts feedback at 120 decibels. The mercs grab their ears. GA bolts. She gets 4 steps. The shock baton catches her in the lower back. She goes down hard. The tablet skitters across the concrete. The backpack with the cube slides off her shoulder. The shaved head merc steps on GA's wrist and tells her team to grab the hardware. GA's vision is swimming. She watches one of them pick up the cube. Another grabs the tablet. She tries to reach for the small stun gun in her jacket pocket. The merc sees it and kicks her hand away. Jia's captured. Her last thought before the bag goes over her head is that Do-yoon still doesn't know they cut off Junction 12. Do-yoon is fighting 3 mercs in the maintenance room. The exoskeleton's right leg joint finally gives out. He stumbles. One merc puts a round through the left shoulder strut. The impact spins Do-yoon sideways. He hits the floor. The exoskeleton's weight pins him. 2 mercs train their rifles on him. The third checks the room. He finds the empty cradle where the cube used to sit. He radios Ju-hyuk. The cube is not on site. Ju-hyuk's voice crackles through. He asks about the girl. Another voice cuts in. The shaved head merc reports that they have Choi GA and 2 data devices. One of them is pulsing green. Ju-hyuk says, good. He tells the team in the maintenance room to secure the boy. Do-yoon hears all of this from under the exoskeleton. He knows GA is caught. He knows they have the cube. He knows he has about 10 seconds before these 2 men cuff him. He doesn't have 10 seconds. He has 1 resonance igniter in his pocket and 1 functional arm on the exoskeleton. He resonates. It's not the clean command state he used on the weapon platform. This is raw, angry. The exoskeleton's busted leg actuator screams. The metal remembers what it was before he shaped it. It remembers being a car axle. It remembers being a steel beam. It doesn't want to move like a human leg. Do-yoon forces it. The leg spasms. The frame jerks upward. The 2 mercs step back. Do-yoon's free hand pulls the resonance igniter from his pocket and throws it at the ceiling above them. The igniter hits a concrete beam and detonates. A focused resonance spike rips through the ceiling. Chunks of concrete rain down. The mercs dive for cover. Do-yoon sheds the exoskeleton and runs. He doesn't run for Junction 12. He knows that route is cut. He runs for the maintenance hatch that leads to the storm drain. The same one he used when he first found Sim's workshop. Behind him, the ceiling collapses. The maintenance room fills with dust and rubble. The exoskeleton frame is buried. The cube cradle is buried. The base is gone. The bumblebees still circling outside relay the feed to his phone. He sees the mercs pulling out. He sees GA thrown into the back of an armored van. He sees the van drive west, toward the industrial district, toward Kwan Tower. Do-yoon stands in the storm drain. His capacitor glove is drained. His exoskeleton is rubble. His ally is captured. His cube is in enemy hands. He has 1 resonance igniter left, the clothes on his back, and the weapon platform folded into a backpack-sized cube under a tarp in the scrap runner. The scrap runner is still parked in the underground garage, 4 blocks from the subway station. He walks toward it through the pre-dawn dark. Ju-hyuk's voice crackles on the mercenary channel one last time. He tells his team to bring the girl and the core fragment to Kwan Tower. He says Kwan wants to talk to her personally. The transmission cuts. Do-yoon reaches the garage. The scrap runner's side door is open from when GA grabbed the cube. He climbs in. The van hums. The resonance cradle is empty. The weapon platform is still there. He sits in the driver's seat. He doesn't start the van. He pulls up the bumblebee feeds and watches the armored van enter Kwan Tower's underground parking structure. The timestamp reads 4:47 a.m. Kwan has GA, Kwan has the cube, and Do-yoon is alone. He needs to get into Kwan Tower. The building has biometric locks on every floor above ground level, armed guards at every entrance, a security room with rotating shifts and redundant camera coverage, drone patrols on the roof, motion sensors in the parking structure. It was designed to keep people like him out, but Do-yoon has been studying Kwan's operations for 2 weeks. He knows the tower's weak points. The loading dock on the east side uses a third-party logistics contractor. Background checks are minimal. Shift change is at 6 a.m. He has an hour. He pulls the weapon platform cube from under the tarp. The backpack-sized block hums with residual resonance. He doesn't need the full platform. He needs one component, the spider bot. He's been designing it in his head for a week. A compact infiltration unit with 8 legs, silent magnetic grip pads, and a camera module from one of the bumblebees. No weapons, no armor, just stealth. He opens the scrap runner's floor panel. Underneath is his emergency stash: scrap metal, spare rotors, capacitors, wiring, a box of core fragments the size of rice grains. He starts building. The spider bot takes shape on the van's floor. Its chassis is a flattened metal disc the size of his palm. 8 articulated legs from spring steel. Each leg ends in a magnetic pad that grips surfaces at any angle. The camera module sits on a swivel mount at the front. The core grain powers it.
Silent.
No heat signature, no radio emissions, just a mechanical spider that moves like a living thing. He finishes at 5:42 a.m. The bot powers up.
Green light pulses through the camera lens.
Do-yoon tests the leg articulation. All 8 joints move smoothly.
He slips the bot into his jacket pocket and starts the scrap runner.
The van hums out of the garage and heads east.
Kwan Tower rises against the gray pre-dawn sky.
40 floors of glass and steel. A monument to Taeson Construction Group's power.
Somewhere inside, GA is in a room with Kwan's interrogators.
Do-yoon parks 3 blocks away in an alley behind a fish processing plant.
He climbs out and walks toward the loading dock.
The shift change is chaos. Delivery trucks, forklifts, workers in orange vests.
Nobody looks at a teenager in a hoodie.
He slips through the dock entrance behind a pallet of office supplies.
The spider bot climbs out of his pocket and scurries up the wall.
Its magnetic pads grip the drywall. It reaches the ceiling and keeps going.
Do-yoon finds a maintenance closet and locks himself inside.
He pulls out his phone. The spider bot's camera feed fills the screen.
His eyes are the bot's eyes.
The bot crawls through the ceiling crawl space. It finds a ventilation duct and slips inside. The duct network runs through the entire building. The bot follows the airflow toward the upper floors. Floor 12, Executive Wing.
The bot drops through a vent grate and clings to the wall.
The hallway is empty. Plush carpet, mahogany doors. One door at the end of the hall has 2 guards outside it, armed. The bot crawls along the ceiling toward that door. It finds a gap between the door frame and the wall and slips through. Inside is a conference room, a long table, leather chairs, and GA.
She's tied to a chair with zip ties.
Her face is bruised. Her lip is split. Kwon Tae-san is sitting across from her. He's calm. He's smiling. He asks her where the boy keeps his other cores. GA doesn't answer. Kwon's smile doesn't waver. He says she'll talk eventually. Everyone does.
He signals to someone off camera.
The spider bot adjusts its angle. Ju Hyuk steps into frame. He holds a small metal case. Inside the case is a syringe. GA sees it and her eyes go wide. Do-yoon sees her face and his resonance spikes.
The spider bot's camera flickers green.
The walls around him vibrate. The entire building is full of metal. Steel beams, copper wiring, aluminum ducts. And all of it sings when he's angry. He climbs out of the maintenance closet. He doesn't bother with stealth anymore.
He walks down the hallway toward the executive elevator.
2 security guards spot him. One reaches for his radio.
Do-yoon's capacitor glove is drained.
He doesn't have the exoskeleton. He doesn't have the resonance igniter.
What he has is the one thing he's been saving for exactly this moment.
He pulls the weapon platform cube from his backpack and slams it against the wall. The cube unfolds. Green light floods the hallway.
The guards shield their eyes.
The platform doesn't deploy into the full exoskeleton frame. It can't. There's no core fragment powerful enough. But the platform remembers what it was. It remembers its purpose. Do-yoon resonates and commands it to form fit. The metal flows like liquid.
It wraps around his right arm and solidifies into a gauntlet.
Not a weapon, a key. The platform was built to interface with the heart.
Kwan Tower's security systems run on harvested core fragments.
Their resonance signatures are the same.
Do-yoon touches the gauntlet to the elevator's access panel.
The panel glows green. The elevator doors open. The guards stare.
Do-yoon steps inside and the doors close.
The elevator rises toward floor 12. Toward GA. Toward Kwon.
Toward the confrontation he's been running toward since the day he first touched a glowing shard in a scrapyard.
He's not running anymore.
The elevator doors slide open on floor 12.
Our boy steps out into the plush hallway like he owns the place.
The 2 guards outside the conference room see him coming.
One reaches for his sidearm. The other grabs his radio. Do-yoon doesn't slow down.
The gauntlet on his right arm pulses green,
and he slams his fist into the wall. Every metal surface on the floor sings. The door frames vibrate.
The guards' radios screech and die.
Their sidearms jam as the firing pins lock up. The first guard stares at his useless weapon. Big mistake.
Do-yoon closes the distance in 3 strides and drives the gauntlet into the man's chest plate.
The impact lifts him off his feet and sends him crashing through the conference room door. The second guard swings a baton at Do-yoon's head.
Do-yoon catches it with the gauntlet.
The baton crumples like tinfoil. The guard's eyes go wide. Our boy headbutts him. The guard drops. Do-yoon steps over the splintered door and into the conference room. Kwon Tae-san is on his feet. The smile is gone.
Ju Hyuk stands between Kwon and the door
with the metal case still open in his hands. GA is tied to the chair.
Her face is wrecked, but her eyes are sharp.
She sees the gauntlet, and she understands.
Kwon's voice is flat when he asks how the boy got past his security. Do-yoon doesn't answer. He looks at GA and asks if she can walk. She says she can run if he gets these zip ties off. Kwon signals Ju-hyuk. Ju-hyuk closes the case and draws a baton of his own. This one hums with resonance. Not scrap-made, but harvested. Stolen from something that was never meant to be a weapon. The mercenary swings and Do-yoon blocks with the gauntlet. Green light flashes where the two metals meet. The impact rattles the conference table. Ju-hyuk presses the attack with 3 quick strikes, each one faster than the last. Do-yoon parries the first 2, but the third catches his shoulder. The baton discharges a pulse that numbs his arm to the fingertips. Ju-hyuk says the gauntlet is impressive, but he's fought better gear. Our boy grins and asks if he's fought someone who can do this. He focuses his resonance, not on the gauntlet, on the entire room. The conference table is steel. The chairs have aluminum frames. The window frames are reinforced alloy. Every piece of metal in the room begins to vibrate. Ju-hyuk's baton shudders in his grip. The metal case on the floor rattles open. The syringe inside rolls across the carpet. Kwon shouts at Ju-hyuk to finish it now. Ju-hyuk lunges, but his baton is fighting him. It won't hold still. It won't obey. Do-yoon raises the gauntlet, and the entire conference table lifts off the floor. The table slams into Ju-hyuk and pins him against the far wall. Kwon stares. Our boy walks past him and rips the zip ties off GA's wrists with one twist of the gauntlet. She's on her feet before the plastic hits the floor. Kwon reaches for something under his jacket. GA grabs the metal case and swings it into his face. The old man staggers. She swings again, and he goes down. She tells Do-yoon there's a terminal in the executive office next door. She saw it when they brought her in. They run. The executive office is locked, but the gauntlet overrides the electronic strike plate in half a second. The door slides open, and GA drops into the leather chair behind a massive oak desk. The terminal is top of the line. Military-grade encryption. GA's fingers fly across the keyboard. She says she needs 3 minutes. Do-yoon asks what she's looking for. She says everything. Kwon's files, his supply chains, his weapon blueprints. The old man was stupid enough to keep it all on one server. The building shakes. Ju-hyuk is up. Do-yoon can feel him through the metal in the walls. The mercenary is coming. GA doesn't look up. She says 2 more minutes. Our boy steps into the hallway. Ju-hyuk is at the far end. His jacket is torn, and his baton is gone, but he's holding something new. A core fragment the size of a golf ball. He presses it into a slot on his wrist gauntlet, and the whole thing ignites with green fire. He says Kwon pays him to eliminate threats. He says this is just business. Then he charges. The first punch cracks the wall where Do-yoon's head was a heartbeat earlier. The second punch catches Do-yoon in the ribs and sends him sliding across the carpet. The gauntlet absorbs most of it, but the impact still rattles his teeth. Ju-hyuk says the boy's resonance is strong, but he's still just a kid. He doesn't know how to fight. Our boy gets to his feet and admits the mercenary has a point. Then he asks if Ju-hyuk has ever been inside an elevator shaft. The mercenary frowns. Do-yoon slams the gauntlet into the floor. The resonance pulse travels through the steel beams and hits the elevator car 20 meters below. The emergency brakes disengage. The car drops. The cables scream. The entire floor lurches as the car slams into the basement. The impact knocks Ju-hyuk off balance. It's only a second, but a second is all our boy needs. He closes the distance and drives the gauntlet into Ju-hyuk's chest. The core fragment in the mercenary's wrist slot cracks. Green light bleeds out of it like a wound. Ju-hyuk gasps and drops to one knee. Do-yoon hits him again. The fragment shatters. The green fire dies. Ju-hyuk collapses. His breathing is shallow, but he's alive. Our boy leaves him there and walks back to the executive office. GA is standing at the door with a flash drive in her hand. She says she got everything. Every file Kwon had. Do-yoon asks what's on it. Her face is pale when she answers. Kwon isn't just building weapons. He's building an EMP, a pulse device big enough to knock out every electronic system in a 50-kilometer radius. He calls it the Overlord. She pulls up a schematic on her phone. The device is massive. A central core housing surrounded by resonance amplifiers. If Kwon fires this thing, every drone, every scanner, every scrap-powered machine Do-yoon has ever built will be dead in an instant. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is where he's building it. GA zooms in on a location marker, an old Taesan construction factory on the north side of the city. The site sits directly on top of a secondary scrap deposit, a smaller one, but still active. Kwon is going to use the Overlord to neutralize every competitor and every threat. Then he's going to harvest the deposit and build more. She says they have maybe 4 days before the weapon is operational. Do-yoon stares at the schematic. Then he asks if she knows anyone who can help them build something big. GA thinks for a moment. She says she knows a mechanic, an outcast named Bae Sung-ri, who runs a chop shop near the old rail yard. She's the best fabricator in the city, but she doesn't work with anyone. Do-yoon asks if she'll work with them. Ji-ae says she might, if they show up with enough scrap to make it worth her while. They leave Kwon Tower through the maintenance exit. The spider bot crawls out of the ventilation shaft and rejoins them on the street. The scrap runner hums to life, and Do-yoon points it toward the rail yard. Bae Sung-ri's chop shop is a converted warehouse, sandwiched between rusting boxcars and mountains of discarded engine blocks. The woman herself is under a gutted semi-truck when they arrive. She slides out on a creeper and sizes them up. She's in her late 20s with grease up to her elbows and a welding mask pushed up on her forehead. She asks if they're lost. Ji-ae tosses her the flash drive and says they need her to look at something. Sung-ri plugs the drive into a battered laptop and scrolls through Kwon's files. Her expression doesn't change until she reaches the Overlord schematic. Then she whistles low and asks if this is real. Do-yoon says it's real, and it'll be operational in 4 days. Sung-ri asks what they want her to do about it. Our boy tells her he needs a vehicle, armored, fast, big enough to carry 4 people and a pulse cannon through a fortified factory perimeter. Sung-ri laughs. She says that's not a vehicle, that's a war machine. Do-yoon pulls the gauntlet from his backpack and sets it on her workbench. He tells her he can shape metal with his mind. He can make parts that don't exist. He just needs someone who knows how to put them together. Sung-ri stares at the gauntlet. She picks it up and turns it over in her hands. She says she's heard rumors about scrap tech. She never believed them. Ji-ae says the rumors are true. She's seen what Do-yoon can build. Sung-ri puts the gauntlet down and says she needs one more thing, a gunner. Do-yoon asks where they find one. Sung-ri pulls out her phone and dials a number. She says she knows a guy. An hour later, a man walks into the chop shop. He's in his 50s with gray stubble and the kind of stillness that comes from decades of discipline. His name is Park Dong-ho, former Special Forces. Dishonorably discharged for punching a superior officer who was taking bribes from a weapons contractor. He's been working security for Sung-ri ever since. Dong-ho listens to the plan. He looks at the schematic. He asks what kind of resistance they're expecting. Ji-ae pulls up satellite imagery of the factory. Guard towers at all 4 corners. A 12-foot concrete wall topped with razor wire. Armed patrols rotating every 6 hours. Thermal cameras covering every approach. Dong-ho nods slowly. He says it's a hard target. Then he grins and says he's been bored for 3 years. The 4 of them get to work. Sung-ri clears out the center of the warehouse, and Do-yoon starts shaping metal. He doesn't sleep. He doesn't eat. He resonates until his nose bleeds and his vision blurs. And then he drinks the tea Sim taught him to brew, and he keeps going. The crane truck Sung-ri sources is a beast. A 20-ton mobile crane with a reinforced chassis and hydraulic stabilizers. They strip the crane arm off and start from the frame up. Do-yoon shapes scrap armor plates 3 inches thick. The plates interlock like scales, resonance-forged alloy that can shrug off small arms fire. Sung-ri welds the mounts and rigs the suspension to handle the extra weight. Dong-ho designs the firing ports and the armored shutters. Ji-ae runs the wiring. Every sensor feed, every camera, every targeting system. She connects it all to a central console in the armored cab. By day 2, the vehicle looks like something out of a nightmare. A rolling fortress on 6 reinforced tires. Matte black armor. Sloped plates to deflect incoming fire. A turret ring on the roof. The pulse cannon is the last piece. Do-yoon has 1 core fragment left, the fist-sized chunk of the heart. He holds it in his hands and closes his eyes. He listens. The fragment hums. It remembers what it was. It remembers the weapon platform. It remembers the ancient forge. Do-yoon shapes it into a barrel, a focusing chamber, an accelerator coil. The cannon takes form on the workbench. It's 4 feet long and glows with a steady green light. Sung-ri asks how much damage it can do. Our boy says he doesn't know. He's never built one before. Dong-ho says they should test it. They tow the vehicle out to an abandoned quarry at 3 in the morning. Dong-ho sets up a target, a stack of scrap steel plates a foot thick. Do-yoon climbs into the turret seat and grips the cannon's controls. The weapon hums at his touch. He resonates, and the chamber charges. Green light builds. The hum becomes a shriek. He fires. The beam punches through the steel like it's wet cardboard. The target plate glows white-hot and then folds in on itself. The shot keeps going and buries itself in the quarry wall 50 meters beyond. The echo rolls across the empty pit. Sung-ri stares at the hole. Dong-ho whistles. Ji-ae checks the sensor readings and says the output is stable. Our boy climbs down from the turret. He says they're ready. The 4 of them stand in the cold, pre-dawn dark. The armored vehicle gleams behind them. Green light pulses from the cannon's barrel. Do-yoon looks at his crew. A hacker, a mechanic, a soldier, and a boy who talks to metal. He tells them Kwon thinks he's the one with the weapon. He thinks he's already won. Seung-ri grins and asks what they're going to do about it. Do-yoon looks at the factory on GA's tablet. The satellite image shows lights burning in every window. Kwon's crews are working around the clock. 4 days is almost up. Our boy says they're going to drive through the front gate and show him what a real weapon looks like. The armored truck idles at the factory's outer checkpoint. Seung-ri's hands are steady on the wheel. She asks if everyone is strapped in. Dong-ho racks the slide on his rifle and says he was born ready. GA's eyes are glued to her tablet, cycling through every camera feed. She says the north gate has 4 guards and an automated turret. Our boy is in the turret seat with his hands on the pulse cannon's grips. The green glow from the barrel paints his face in soft emerald light. He tells Seung-ri to punch it. The crane truck roars forward. 20 tons of reinforced steel and resonance-forged armor hits the gate at 60 kilometers an hour. The chain link and reinforced steel frame doesn't stand a chance. It peels apart like cheap foil. The guards at the checkpoint have half a second to react. Half a second isn't enough. Do-yoon swings the turret and fires a low-power pulse into the guard tower's base. The concrete buckles, and the tower leans sideways. The guards bail out, hitting the ground hard, scrambling for cover. The automated turret spins up and sprays a burst of armor-piercing rounds. The bullets spark off the sloped armor plates and ricochet into the dark. Do-yoon rotates the turret and takes the turret out with a second pulse. The turret's ammo box cooks off in a chain of popping detonations. Dong-ho leans out a firing port and drops the 2 guards trying to flank them. He says left flank clear and taps the hull twice. Seung-ri doesn't slow down. The truck plows through a stack of steel barrels and fishtails onto the main yard. The factory looms ahead. A brutalist concrete block 4 stories tall with slit windows glowing yellow. Smokestacks belch gray exhaust into the pre-dawn sky. Kwon's crews are working overtime to finish the Overlord. They don't get to finish. GA says she's got 2 more guard posts ahead and a heavy weapons team setting up on the loading dock. She highlights their positions on the tactical overlay. Do-yoon sees the thermal signatures clustered near the main entrance. A dozen men with rifles and at least 1 crew-served weapon. He tells Seung-ri to swing wide and give him a firing angle on the loading dock. The truck lurches left, tires chewing up gravel and frozen mud. The guards on the dock are setting up a tripod-mounted launcher, some kind of anti-armor missile. Do-yoon doesn't give them time to aim. He resonates and the pulse cannon charges in half a second. The beam lances out and hits the dock 2 meters below the launcher team. Concrete vaporizes. The shockwave hurls the guards and their missile launcher into the side of the factory. The launcher clatters to the ground in 3 bent pieces. Dong-ho says, "Nice shot." Our boy doesn't answer. His nose is bleeding. The resonance burns behind his eyes like a hot wire. He drinks from the flask of Sim's tea clipped to his harness. The burn dulls to a throb. He charges the cannon again. Seung-ri drives straight through the inner fence and slams the accelerator to the floor. The truck smashes through the loading bay doors in a shower of corrugated steel and shattered glass. They're inside. The bay is cavernous and loud. Assembly lines stretch into the distance, conveyor belts moving raw scrap toward massive stamping presses. The air smells of ozone and hot metal. Workers in hard hats scatter like startled birds. GA says the core chamber is 3 floors down, through the central elevator shaft. She pulls up the blueprints she stole from Kwon's server. The Overlord's main core housing is directly below the assembly floor, in a reinforced bunker. Dong-ho says they'll need to clear the factory floor first. He points at the catwalks overhead. Armed security is already moving into position, at least 20 men with rifles and shotguns. Do-yoon swings the turret up and fires a series of low-power pulses that shred the catwalk railings. The security team dives for cover. Seung-ri rams the truck through a row of forklifts and parks it on top of the central elevator pad. GA says the elevator is locked down from the bunker. Our boy climbs out of the turret and drops to the concrete floor. He slams his gauntlet into the elevator's control panel. Resonance floods through him. He feels the circuitry, the magnetic locks, the counterweight cables. He tells the elevator to open. The metal screams and the doors buckle inward. Green light flickers along the elevator shaft's walls. The shaft drops straight down into darkness. Jia says it's a 30-meter descent. Dong-ho attaches a climbing line to the truck's winch and tosses the coil into the shaft. The line vanishes into the black. Do-yoon clips into his harness and steps off the edge. He rappels down fast, gauntlet sparking against the shaft wall to slow his descent. The green veins in the concrete pulse brighter the deeper he goes. This is a secondary deposit, smaller than the one under Sim's workshop, but deep enough. The shaft opens into a circular bunker. The Overlord's core chamber. The room is 60 meters across and lined with resonance amplifiers. Each amplifier is a spire of salvaged scrap metal studded with harvested core fragments. The stolen shards glow with a sickly green-yellow light. None of them are stable. They've been forced into the housing with brute force, not resonance. The machine at the center of the room is a nightmare. The Overlord. A squat cylinder of black alloy 2 stories tall, ringed with copper coils as thick as a man. The central core housing pulses with a dull red light. It's already charging. Dong-ho drops into the chamber beside Do-yoon and says it's bigger than he expected. G.A.'s voice crackles through the comm. She says the Overlord's charge cycle is at 70%. They've got maybe 8 minutes before it can fire. Do-yoon tells Seung-ri to keep the engine running and be ready to move on his signal. He walks toward the central housing. His gauntlet hums. The resonance in this room is wrong. The amplifiers aren't in harmony with the core. They're fighting it, forcing it. The noise of it grates against Do-yoon's skull like broken glass. He can feel the secondary deposit beneath the floor. The scrap is screaming. Dong-ho circles the perimeter, setting breaching charges on the amplifier supports. His movements are efficient and silent. 20 years of training distilled into every step. G.A. says she's got movement on the upper factory floor. Thermal signatures converging on the elevator shaft. A lot of them. Our boy asks if it's Ju-hyuk. G.A. says the signature is too big. Much too big. The ceiling of the core chamber shudders. A panel of reinforced concrete shears loose and crashes to the floor 50 meters away. Dust billows in a choking cloud, and then it steps through the gap. The mech is a monster, 3 meters taller than the one Ju-hyuk piloted at the tower. Its chassis is layered with overlapping plates of harvested scrap. The core housing on its chest glows a deep, angry red. Not green. Red means the resonance is unstable. Red means it's burning through its core with every second of operation. Ju-hyuk's voice comes through the mech's external speakers. He says he hoped Do-yoon would come. He says he's been waiting for a rematch. The mech's right arm lifts. A plasma cutter the size of a sedan unfolds from its forearm. The weapon ignites with a shriek that makes Do-yoon's teeth ache. Dong-ho fires 3 rounds into the mech's knee joint. The armor plates absorb the shots without a scratch. The mech turns and swats Dong-ho with the back of its hand. He flies 20 meters and hits the wall hard. His rifle clatters away. Our boy doesn't wait to see if he gets up. He charges the pulse cannon on his gauntlet and fires a beam straight into the mech's chest. The shot hits the red core housing dead center. Green light clashes with red. The mech staggers back 2 steps. The housing sparks and cracks but holds. Ju-hyuk laughs and says the Overlord's amplifiers boost his output by a factor of 10. He says Do-yoon can't beat him here. Do-yoon is already running. The mech's plasma cutter sweeps across the chamber floor, melting concrete into glowing slag. Our boy slides behind an amplifier spire and feels the heat wash over him. His jacket sleeve catches fire. He slaps it out and rolls to the next cover position. G.A. says the Overlord is at 82% charge. She says they need to shut it down now. Do-yoon tells her to start the bypass sequence on the amplifiers. He'll keep Ju-hyuk busy. The mech smashes through the amplifier spire Do-yoon was hiding behind 3 seconds ago. Scrap fragments scatter like shrapnel. Do-yoon activates his exoskeleton. The frame unfolds from the pack on his back, green-lit alloy wrapping around his arms and legs. The platform's interface flickers in the corner of his vision. Structural damage assessment active. Threat analysis active. Countermeasure deployment ready. The mech swings its plasma cutter in a horizontal arc. Do-yoon jumps. The exoskeleton's legs fire with a pulse of resonance and launch him 8 meters into the air. He clears the plasma arc and lands on the mech's extended arm. He runs up the arm's length, gauntlets sparking against the scrap plating. Ju-hyuk tries to shake him off. The mech lurches and slams its arm into a support pillar. Do-yoon jumps again. He lands on the mech's shoulder and drives his gauntlet into the neck joint. The resonance pulse fires directly into the mech's internal systems. The mech's head snaps back. Its left arm goes limp. The red core housing flickers. Ju-hyuk screams something inarticulate through the speakers, and the mech's right arm grabs Do-yoon. The grip is crushing. The exoskeleton's integrity warnings spike to critical. Our boy's ribs creak. He can't breathe. The mech lifts him in front of the cracked core housing. Ju-hyuk says Do-yoon is strong, but strength doesn't matter. He says Kwon is going to fire the Overlord, and nothing Do-yoon does can stop it. He says the pulse will knock out every electronic device within 50 kilometers. The city will go dark. Emergency services will collapse. Kwon will declare martial law and take control of every scrap deposit in the region. Ju-hyuk tightens the mech's grip. Do-yoon's vision goes gray at the edges. He can feel the Overlord's charge climbing. 87%. He can feel the unstable resonance cycling through the amplifiers. The scrap screaming in the wrong frequency. He stops fighting the mech's grip. He goes still. He listens. Not to the overlord, not to Joo-hyuk's mech. He listens to the secondary deposit, the scrap buried 50 meters below the concrete floor. The ancient metal that has slept for millennia. He reaches down with his resonance, and he asks it to wake up. The floor cracks. A fissure opens beneath the overlord's central housing. Green light pours out of the earth like a wound. The amplifiers shriek as their frequencies are overridden. The forced resonance shatters. One by one, the stolen core fragments in the amplifier spires go dark. Joo-hyuk says that's impossible. Do-yoon opens his eyes. His irises are solid green. The resonance is no longer just in his head. It's in the air. It's in every piece of metal in this room. He tells Joo-hyuk that Kwon never understood what the scrap is. It isn't a resource. It isn't a weapon. It's alive. The mech's red core housing flickers and dies. The plasma cutter retracts. The armored plates loosen as the resonance holding them together collapses. Joo-hyuk pounds the emergency release, and the cockpit hatch blows open. He stumbles out with a sidearm raised. Dong-ho puts him down with a single shot to the shoulder. Joo-hyuk hits the floor and doesn't move. The overlord's charge cycle reverses. 70%, 50%, 30%. The central housing vents steam, and the red glow gutters out. GA says the amplifiers are offline and the core is purging its charge. She says it's working. And then the bunker's main blast doors blow inward. Kwon Tae-san walks through the smoke. He is not alone. Behind him are 30 men in tactical gear, full body armor, military-grade rifles. And at the center of the formation, a flatbed cart carrying a resonance amplifier that isn't connected to the overlord. It's a mobile unit, a prototype. Kwon says Do-yoon thinks he's very clever. Reaching into the secondary deposit to disrupt the amplifiers, Kwon says he anticipated that possibility. The mobile amplifier is independent of the overlord's infrastructure. It's powered by a core fragment he harvested from the main deposit weeks ago. He says Do-yoon never had a chance. Kwon orders his men to fire. The sound of 30 rifles cycling at once fills the chamber. Do-yoon's exoskeleton integrity is at 18%. Dong-ho is wounded. The overlord is disabled but not destroyed. And Kwon is standing in front of him, with a weapon that can still end this city. Our boy looks at GA's tablet feed on his display. Seung-ri has the truck idling on the elevator pad 3 floors up. The pulse cannon is still charged. He can see the green glow even through the concrete. He tells Seung-ri to fire through the floor. Seung-ri hears the order and doesn't hesitate. The pulse cannon fires straight down through 3 floors of reinforced concrete. A column of green light the diameter of a manhole cover punches through the ceiling above Kwon's formation. The mobile amplifier's housing takes a direct hit. The prototype shrieks and splits down the middle, and its core fragment evaporates in a flash of white-green light. Kwon throws himself sideways, and 3 of his soldiers aren't fast enough. The beam vaporizes the flatbed cart and the men standing on it, and carves a 3-meter crater into the factory floor. The remaining soldiers scatter. Do-yoon's exoskeleton integrity drops to 12%, but he's already moving. He grabs GA by the back of her jacket and launches them both toward the elevator shaft. The exoskeleton's legs scream, and the jump is short, and they hit the shaft wall 6 meters below the elevator pad. Do-yoon drives his gauntlet into the concrete, and they slide to a stop. GA says she really hates this plan. Above them, Seung-ri cranks the truck's winch, and the cable drops past their faces. Do-yoon grabs it with his free hand, and Seung-ri hauls them up in 3 jerking pulls. They tumble onto the elevator pad, and Do-yoon's exoskeleton finally gives out. The frame unlocks from his body and clatters to the concrete in 6 separate pieces. His nose is bleeding freely, and his right eye won't focus. GA is already in the truck's cabin, and she's screaming at Seung-ri to drive. The truck lurches forward, and the reinforced tires chew through the factory's upper service corridor. Behind them, the sound of organized gunfire finally stops. Kwon's voice echoes through the factory PA, and our boy can hear the rage even through the static. The man says Do-yoon has made a very large mistake. He says the overlord was never the only weapon. He says the main deposit is older than the secondary, and its resonance runs deeper. And Do-yoon has just proven he can't protect anything. The truck smashes through the factory's rear gate, and Seung-ri floors it onto the access road. And then, the pulse hits. It doesn't come from the factory. It comes from the east end of the city, where Taesan Construction's main headquarters sits on top of the primary scrap deposit. The wave is invisible, but Do-yoon feels it in his teeth first. Every electronic device in the truck dies at once. The engine cuts, and the dashboard goes black, and the radio spits static and then silence. The truck rolls to a stop in the middle of the access road. The city around them goes dark. Streetlights wink out block by block, and the distant hum of traffic vanishes, and the only light left is the sickly green glow bleeding up from the fissure beneath the factory. GA tries her tablet and her phone, and the truck's emergency radio, and nothing works. She says the pulse is wider than the Overlord's projected radius, and it hit everything. Seung-ri pops the hood and stares at the dead engine block, and says they are officially stranded. Dong-ho is slumped in the truck bed, and his shoulder wound is still bleeding, and he asks if anyone has a working phone. Nobody does. The world has gone quiet in a way Do-yoon has never heard before. No engines and no sirens, and no distant construction noise, and no hum of power line. Just wind and the creak of cooling metal and the soft green pulse of the awakened scrap beneath the earth. GA asks what they do now. Do-yoon doesn't answer right away because something is wrong with the silence. It isn't empty. He can feel the scrap, all of it, not just the secondary deposit, and not just the fragments he's awakened before, but every buried shard and every forgotten core and every scrap-laced vein of metal in the entire city. The pulse didn't just knock out electronics, and it woke something up. The green veins in the road beneath his feet are glowing brighter, and they're spreading. GA sees it too, and she says that's not normal. Do-yoon crouches and presses his palm to the asphalt and closes his eyes. He listens. The scrap is humming, not in pain and not in warning, and not in any frequency he's encountered before. It's humming in recognition. The pulse didn't disable the scrap, and it fed it. Kwon triggered something he doesn't understand, and now the entire deposit network is resonating at the same frequency. And Do-yoon can hear all of it. He stands up and his nose has stopped bleeding, and his vision is clear. He tells GA and Seung-ri and Dong-ho that they need to move, and they need to do it now. Seung-ri asks where they're supposed to go with a dead truck. Do-yoon points west toward the old industrial district and the abandoned rail yard, and the miles of rusted steel that nobody has touched in 30 years. He says Kwon's control ends where the electronics end. He says the scrap doesn't need circuits to move. Seung-ri stares at him, and then at the dead truck, and then back at him. He says that's insane. Do-yoon says he knows. They push the truck off the road and into a drainage ditch, and cover it with tarps and scrap metal. And Seung-ri watches his beautiful armored beast disappear under a pile of garbage. He looks like a man at a funeral. The four of them walk west on foot. It takes 3 hours. They pass cars stopped in the middle of intersections, and people standing on sidewalks staring at dead phones and shops with dark windows and manual cash registers dragged out of storage. Nobody pays attention to 4 more people walking. By the time they reach the rail yard, the sun is coming up. The yard is a graveyard of locomotives and flatbed cars, and shipping containers, and rusted cranes that haven't moved since the steel mill closed. Do-yoon walks to the center of the yard and puts both hands on a rusted locomotive's drive wheel. The metal is cold and dead and inert. He reaches down with his resonance and asks it to move. The drive wheel doesn't turn, but the vibration comes back, not from the locomotive, but from below it. The rail yard is built on top of a tertiary deposit, and the scrap here is deeper and older, and it hasn't been touched in centuries. Do-yoon feels it respond. Seung-ri says the entire ground is glowing. Green light seeps up through the gravel between the rails and the rusted tracks, and the weeds growing through the ties. Do-yoon tells the others to find shelter and stay there. He says he's going to need a few days. GA asks what he's planning. Do-yoon looks at the locomotives and the freight cars and the shipping containers full of rusted scrap and the crane gantries that still stand 90 feet tall. He says Kwon took away their electronics. He's going to give them something that doesn't need any. The first automaton is the size of a dog. Do-yoon builds it from a locomotive's brake cylinder and the drive chain from a rusted conveyor and a furnace door from the old foundry. He doesn't use a core fragment. He doesn't have any left. Instead, he resonates directly with the tertiary deposit, and the scrap answers in a frequency so low, it feels like an earthquake in his bones. The automaton's joints are crude, and its frame is heavy, and there's not a single circuit board or battery in its entire body. It moves because Do-yoon asks it to move, and the scrap remembers how. Seung-ri watches it walk across the gravel and says that's the most terrifying thing he's ever seen. Do-yoon says it's just the prototype. By the second day, he's built 12 of them. Dog-sized haulers that drag scrap beams and furnace-made joint mechanisms that he forges in a pit kiln and leg assemblies from locomotive suspension springs. The automatons don't require constant resonance. Do-yoon gives each one a simple instruction, and the scrap holds the command like a groove worn into old stone. GA says it's like programming without a computer. Dong-ho says it's more like training attack dogs made of rust. On the third day, Kwon's voice returns. Not through electronics, but through loudspeakers mounted on trucks that patrol the city's main roads. He declares martial law and announces that the blackout is proof of Do-yoon's terrorism and says anyone harboring the fugitive will be prosecuted.
He's consolidated control of every scrap processing facility in the region, and his men are hauling core fragments from the main deposit around the quick clock. GA says Kwon is building a second overlord, and this one will be bigger. She says the data from the flash drive shows the main deposit is at least 4 times the size of the secondary, and Kwon has been drilling into it for years. Do-yoon asks how long they have. GA says maybe a week before Kwon can stabilize the new amplifier array. Our boy looks at his 12 haulers and his forge pit, and the locomotive frame he's been stripping for structural steel. He says they need to build bigger. The furnace-powered humanoid mech begins as a sketch in the gravel. Seung-ri does the math on weight distribution and joint stress, and the thermal limits of forge-welded scrap. Dong-ho handles the weapons and draws up plans for arm-mounted pile drivers and a chest-mounted cannon that fires compressed scrap slugs. GA calculates load-bearing and power transfer and designs a drive system that uses steam pressure instead of resonance for basic locomotion. The mech will walk on steam and fight on resonance. Do-yoon provides the command architecture. He embeds hundreds of small instructions into the scrap metal as they forge it, and each plate, and each piston, and each joint carries a fragment of his intent. The scrap isn't just assembling, and it's learning. On the 4th day, the mech's torso takes shape. It stands 22 feet from hip to shoulder, and its chest cavity houses a locomotive boiler that Seung-ri has been modifying for 3 days straight. The arms are forged from crane boom sections, and the hands are excavator buckets modified into 5-fingered fists. There's no cockpit. Do-yoon will command the mech from outside, and the scrap will follow his resonance like an extension of his own body. GA asks if that's safe. Do-yoon says nothing about this has ever been safe. On the 5th day, the mech stands on its own legs. It's 40 feet tall from the bottom of its reinforced feet to the top of its furnace stack. The chest-mounted cannon is a reinforced pipe that fires scrap slugs the size of bowling balls. And the pile drivers in its fists can punch through. 6 inches of armor plate. It doesn't have a single wire or circuit or battery. It breathes steam, and it walks on clockwork. And it fights on the oldest resonance Do-yoon has ever felt. The tertiary deposit is still glowing beneath the rail yard, and the green light has spread through every crack in the concrete and every seam in the gravel. Do-yoon stands in front of the mech and raises his hand. The mech raises its hand in perfect synchronization. Dong-ho says it's beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Seung-ri says he wishes Sim could see this. GA doesn't say anything, but her eyes are wet. On the morning of the 6th day, Kwon finds them. His scouts followed the green glow. 30 trucks roll up to the perimeter of the rail yard, and behind them comes an armored excavator modified with resonance amplifiers and a core, housing that glows the same dull red as the Overlord. Kwon stands on the excavator's platform with a megaphone and 32 armed men at his back. He says Do-yoon has been very resourceful. He says the mech is impressive for a child playing in a junkyard. He says it won't matter. Do-yoon steps forward, and the mech steps with him. The ground shakes. Kwon's men raise their rifles. The excavator's amplifiers cycle up, and the red glow intensifies. The air hums with 2 competing frequencies, and the scrap in the rail yard is screaming in recognition and warning, an ancient fury. Do-yoon raises his right hand. The mech's fist closes. The chest cannon vents steam, and the first slug loads into the chamber with a sound like a hammer striking an anvil. Kwon gives the order to fire. 32 rifles open up at once. The mech's arm comes up to shield Do-yoon, and the bullets spark off the forge-welded plating like rain hitting a tin roof. Do-yoon feels every impact through his resonance, and his nose starts bleeding again, and he doesn't stop walking. The mech's pile driver arm draws back, and the piston locks into firing position with a hiss of steam, and the green light in the rail yard pulses once. And every automaton Do-yoon built in the last 5 days stands up at the same moment. 12 haulers and a dozen half-finished walkers, and the locomotive boiler dogs, and the jury-rigged loader arms he didn't think would be ready in time. They all rise and they all turn toward Kwon's formation, and their eyes are just scrap metal, but their intent is Do-yoon's intent. Kwon's face changes. It's the first time our boy has seen him look afraid.